Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a realm gentler than a swooning settee, yet somehow far, far tougher. The daily life of Victorian women, precisely. As your back finds comfort on a contemporary bed, we're going to slip obliquely into a world of corsets more restrictive than your inbox. Societal expectations are more complex than the newest text chain you are in, and certain benchmarks are so high they make your family members appear nearly normal. A feeling of being overwhelmed by housework, facing judgment from unknown people, or being hurt by the slight insensitivity of your spouse asking you to smile more often. If this describes your experience, you've done well. You are completely welcome here. Prior to securing ourselves in an attire featuring more fasteners than a spacecraft, kindly pause to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Only do this if you genuinely appreciate the material I provide. After that, post a comment informing me of the time and location you are currently viewing from. Now, reduce the lighting, turn on your fan for that authentic haunted house atmosphere, and let's get you prepared. Stop and inhale deeply. Have you ever truly considered how Victorian women occupied their average day? Was flavourless custard their sole source of nutrition? Precisely how much time did the process of getting dressed require? And did anyone ever admit to struggling to take a breath? How did they manage to find time to read when 17 calling cards demanded a response before the morning meal? What did their exercise regimen involve? Was it transporting a fainting couch up the steps, or defending against overly eager male callers? Were they truly passionate about embroidery, or was it merely a polite method to avoid having conversations with their own family? Very well. You have just awakened in the year 1875. You are wearing a ruffled nightgown, you can hear the noises of coal being delivered outside, and there is a great chance you will be criticised for blinking too loudly before midday. I wish you the best of luck. You wake up in a bed stacked so high with coverings you momentarily suspect you are being smothered slowly by a well-meaning relative. The fire in your fireplace died out hours ago, and the air is sharp enough to solidify your ambitions and dreams. Welcome to a Victorian morning where leaving the bed is an achievement and your first decision is whether to summon the maid or simply hope she's already present with tea and disapproval. Let's establish the setting. You are positioned in a 4-post bed draped with enough textile to cover a modest dance hall. You are lying flat on a mattress stuffed with horsehair, goose feathers, or, if your fortune has turned, something that was once dried grass and now only smells of regret. Above you hangs a dense velvet covering that blocks not only the sunlight but also any remaining hope you had of rising early. You are, essentially, sleeping inside the most excessively constructed pillow fort in all of history. There is no automated alarm mechanism. Instead, you are roused by a medley of sounds unique to a Victorian residence. The distant sound of coal being dropped into a container, the quiet sound of a maid meticulously entering your space, and the muffled impact of your own sense of wrongdoing for staying awake until midnight reading Charlotte Bronte under the covers. Perhaps you are fortunate and someone has relit the warmth, or perhaps you are already mentally writing your elegant but firm complaint about cold feet in the living room. You consider hiding deeper for an instant, but you understand what awaits. The day will not wait for you, and neither will your societal commitments. The air is so cold your breath appears in small clouds, and you briefly consider inventing contemporary heating just to avoid leaving the warmth. But this is the Victorian age, so your sole solution is to reach out for the bell pull. You give a gentle tug to a decorative rope hanging conveniently next to your bed, which, when pulled, informs the housemaid that it's time to commence the day's intricate performance. The maid arrives with a quiet look of judgment in her flawlessly starched head covering, carrying a tray holding weak tea, a small piece of toast, and the subtle hope that you won't need the chamber pot today. She immediately pulls back the heavy curtains, allowing the glorious British daylight to enter. It is grey, muted, and slightly damp, like being gently woken up by a massive cloud. You are now exposed to the outside world, or at least to your neighbour's groundskeeper, who is either trimming the bushes or, more likely, listening intently for information for gossip. The next phase in the morning trial is the process of the warming vessel, not the pleasant kind. This is the Victorian container for heated water, recently filled from the kitchen boiler and wrapped in fabric. It has kept your feet at a comfortable 32 degrees Fahrenheit all night and must now be awkwardly handed back to the maid, who will replace it with a fresh one for tonight's rest. Attempt to avoid making eye contact. You both understand the unspoken agreement. You swing your legs over the edge, instantly regretting it as your soles meet the chilled surface. The lack of modern central heating means your toes have just contacted what Victorian builders called charming original floorboards and what you think of as a gamble with frostbite. If you are wealthy, a worn rug might be present beneath your feet. If not, you are experiencing the historical equivalent of a plunge into ice water. Getting dressed remains a distant source of terror. First, you must confront the infamous morning cleaning ritual, a jug of water which was warmed when the maid brought it approximately 30 minutes ago. It now rests freezing on the washstand. You quickly splash your face, gasping like a fish stranded on a glacier, and dry yourself with a piece of fabric so stiff it could probably function as a baking tray. Cleanliness in the Victorian manner is predominantly a consequence of waking up, as you attempt to restore circulation to your fingers and toes. Your thoughts wander to your daily responsibilities, a schedule filled with light social calls, never-ending correspondence, and worrying about whether your cousin's newest headwear endangers civilization. But, for now, you have achieved the first small victory. You are vertical. You are fully aware. You are 80% blanket and 20% feelings of existential dread. And if you manage to avoid tripping over the receptacle, you are already well ahead in the game. Welcome to the bedroom confrontation. The same struggle, simply a different century. Before you can face polite society, you must first survive the daily ordeal of getting into your clothes. This is not the simple process of grabbing the nearest sweater. No, you require assistance, usually from a highly patient lady's maid, just to be constrained into stays so tight they could potentially modify your genetic code. Breathing is not a requirement. Correct posture is essential. You commence the trial shaking in your undergarments, the final lingering trace of comfort before the full body armour of the day is applied. Your maid approaches with the quiet determination of a Victorian battlefield medic, already assessing your ribcage and determining the likelihood of you losing consciousness before the first meal. The corset itself is a formidable garment, reinforced with boning, secured with laces, and engineered to shape your midsection into an hourglass silhouette. Even if you were naturally shaped more like a reliable loaf of bread, the process is less about sliding it on and more of a fight against the laws of nature. You grip the bedpost for stability while your maid pulls at the laces with the kind of focus usually reserved for pulling tree roots from the soil. Each pull is accompanied by the delicate sound of straining material, desperate exhalations, and, on a fortunate morning, only a touch of wheezing. This is the Victorian equivalent of high-intensity interval training. Remain still, breathe in, endure. If you are lucky, the stays fit as intended, which means you can nearly take a full breath and only experience numbness in one appendage. If you are less fortunate, you are trying out for the main role in a very slow, very courteous suffocation. Victorian society believed a narrow waist symbolised peak beauty and self-control. But the reality is that it is a daily contest between personal vanity, the laws of physics, and your body's fundamental need to keep functioning. But wait, there is more. The corset is only the beginning. Over it goes a delicate cotton underskirt, then a second underskirt, then perhaps one made of wool if the British weather is promising cold punishment. Each underskirt is another shield against both the chill and any notions of moving spontaneously. By the time you are fully outfitted, your lower body resembles a tiered celebration dessert, and any swift attempt to sit down is a carefully calculated risk. Next arrives the cage crinoline, a bell-shaped framework of whalebone or steel designed to give your skirt its fashionable volume and guarantee you occupy more area in the reception room than a typical Victorian footstool. Navigating through doorways transforms into a strategic operation. If you misjudge the angle, you will either wedge yourself into the space or take the nearby coat rack down with you. If you have ever attempted to parallel park a large automobile on a congested street, you have an idea of what it is like to cross a breakfast room while wearing a crinoline. Now, the outer garment. This might be cotton for the daytime, silk if you possess significant wealth, or heavy wool if you anticipate spending several hours regretting your existence. The sleeves are tight, the buttons are countless, and every layer is designed to convey a clear message. You are not here for personal comfort. Your maid fastens the dozens of minute buttons extending from your throat to your ankles, each one a tribute to patience and the world's most impractical approach to fashion engineering. Accessories are next, stockings held up by garters that, let's be honest, never remain in place. A pair of boots laced up to your mid-calf, a covering to fill in any inappropriate gaps near your neck. And, naturally, gloves. You may be one minor discomfort away from fainting, but at least your wrists are covered with modesty. Finally, your hair must be styled, a procedure so involved it deserves its own dramatic stage show. Curls are fastened, bonnets are positioned, and not a single strand is permitted to escape, lest the neighbours start complaining. A light spray of lavender scent finishes the ensemble. Although after half an hour wrestling with the corset, what you truly require is hydration and a support group. Fully dressed, you are prepared to face the world, or at least the corridor. Standing straighter, breathing less deeply, and with a renewed appreciation for contemporary casual clothes. It is not merely getting dressed, it is an act of Victorian fashion endurance. Forget scarfing down a breakfast burrito in your vehicle. In Victorian England, breakfast is a refined, silent ceremony of hot tea, toasted bread, and the heavy weight of familial expectations. The good news? Porridge is always available. The bad news? So is your mother's polite disapproval. You enter the breakfast chamber after your exhaustive battle with corsets, layered petticoats, and self-esteem. The dining table stretches so far you are not entirely sure where it actually ends. Possibly in a different postal code. Crisp white table linen, silver utensils, and enough porcelain to make a royal occasion feel modest await you, along with at least one relative whose expression is already fixed on mild displeasure. Taking your designated chair, never, ever the head of the table unless you are the family matriarch, and even then only if everyone else has passed away. You prepare yourself for the first challenge, the act of serving the tea. This is more than just a drink. It is a meticulous test. Pour too quickly and you risk splashing the fabric cover. Scandalous. Pour too slowly and Aunt Agnes will emit a sigh so profound she might dislodge a rib. A delicate spoon taps against the fine cup as you stir in precisely 1 cube of sugar. Unless, of course, someone is watching, in which case it is half a cube and a display of extreme dietary restraint. Milk is added afterward unless you are a known nonconformist, in which case you might add it first, just to observe who inhales sharply. The offerings are consistent, if not particularly thrilling. Toast, arranged like small roof tiles, rests in a silver rack designed to guarantee maximum lack of moisture by the time it gets to your plate. The sticky cereal, thick enough to fill holes in a newly plastered wall, is carefully served in the delicate porcelain bowls with the grim ceremony of a minor graveside service. On a lucky day, you might be offered a single small soft-boiled egg, or, in a moment of shocking bold spending, a solitary breakfast sausage link. Every single bite must be eaten using the correct silver utensils, at a measured, appropriately slow speed, and ideally with no obvious sign of actual pleasure. Talking is permitted, but only in a hushed, controlled whisper, and strictly on topics that will not startle the footman, or give your grandmother new evidence to bring up the details of the Crimean War yet again. Acceptable conversations are limited to the rain, the current condition of the rose garden, and whether anyone has managed to see Lady Penelope's newest terrier. Never discuss bathroom trips, investments, or absolutely never emotions. Beyond all this, there is the silent, heavy, constant tension of family disagreements. Your father, a fortress built entirely of starched cuffs and the morning newspaper, occasionally lowers the sheets to declare some cryptic comment about the value of being on time. Translated, you were exactly 120 seconds late. Your younger siblings quietly plan the total destruction of their porridge while your mother inspects the length of the dining table with a look that conveys both quiet maternal pride and a deep, terrifying concern that you will never land a suitable husband. Meanwhile, your own profound anxiety is bubbling just as much as the steaming tea. Did you truly manage to keep your elbows entirely off the smooth mahogany surface? Is your linen napkin correctly positioned in your lap, folded into an abstract sculpture of quiet submission? Is your back straight, yet not so unyielding that it suggests nervousness, which implies a secret, which suggests you'll become the main subject of post-breakfast gossip? There is a precise, tangible reason the Victorians designed those fainting couches. Most proper ladies were simply desperate for a flat piece of furniture where they could have a panic attack in total solitude. Servants glide in and out of the room, collecting soiled china and replenishing the quickly disappearing supply of perfectly cut toast. You must avoid making any direct eye contact. If your eating fork drops, you must not, under any circumstances, bend to pick it up yourself. That specific task belongs entirely to a footman whose single, only joy in life may be judging the precise sound level of your mistake. The morning ritual concludes not with a rushing stampede for the front door, but with a gentle sound of folded linen napkins, a soft scrape of chairs being carefully replaced, and one final round of completely passive-aggressive comments concerning someone's choice of morning hairstyle. Looking weary, you get up from your seat not actually full but emotionally drained, ready for the day's next uncomfortable experience, and so ends the Victorian breakfast. It is far less a basic meal and much more an extreme endurance test in manners, social tact, and the difficult subtle art of simply tolerating your relatives before the clock strikes 9 in the morning. Well done. You have somehow survived. At least until the sun rises again tomorrow. You might assume that a Victorian beauty routine involves perfumed soaps and relaxing scented bath water, but that belief would be completely wrong. Hair is brushed for exactly 30 minutes with the relentless focus of a military training exercise, and a true, proper bath is more a fictional story than a daily reality. Dry shampoo? The actual reality is common flower powder. Deodorant? You must simply learn to resign yourself. Let us first begin with your most significant crowning achievement. Your long heavy hair. It is simultaneously your biggest source of social pride and your greatest constant burden. Victorian hair is not merely strands of fibre. It is a constant full-time job, a social status symbol, and a possible cause for truly scandalous rumours. Each new morning your personal maid arrives armed with a stiff boar bristle brush, a variety of tortoise-shell combs, and the single-minded determination of a general preparing for a major battle. The dedicated brushing process takes such an extended period of time, you could easily read Jane Eyre out loud to yourself and still have extra time left over for the pre-breakfast newspaper headlines. Why such incredibly excessive brushing? Because the simple act of washing your hair, very much like spotting a unicorn, is both exceedingly uncommon and logistically incredibly difficult. A real Victorian hair washing experience is a truly epic and exhausting event. Water must be carried straight from the kitchen area, heated on the coal range, and hauled up several flights of stairs by a sweating servant who is likely questioning all of their career choices. Then there is the soap, possibly made at home, possibly corrosive enough to strip paint, and always oddly thick and chunky. Most proper women only risk a full, complete wash once every week at the absolute maximum. For everyone else, Refreshing one's locks means a delicate application of hair powder, rice flour if you are sufficiently wealthy, plain common flour if you are not, or in moments of quiet emotional desperation, a little talc and a silent prayer. The final result: hair that feels slightly less grimy, but now possesses a faint smell of yesterday's dinner rolls. As for the remainder of your body, the full Victorian bath is more like an ancient tradition than a part of the daily schedule. Full immersion in water is strictly reserved only for special occasions or a sudden impending royal visit. Most regular days you must be satisfied with the simple basin wash, which necessitates a small pitcher of somewhat lukewarm water, a tiny sponge, and a highly strategic mental game of determining which body parts are most likely to be examined by a physician, a clergyman, or your formidable mother-in-law. Public bathhouses do exist, but are generally regarded with deep suspicion and sometimes outright terror. Who knows what terrible things might actually take place in such buildings? Cleanliness, socializing, enjoyment. The soap itself is a complicated and tricky matter. Highly expensive perfumed soap is the exclusive privilege of the extremely wealthy, and even they use it with great care, as if every small bubbly lather chips a year off the family fortune. For everyone else, soap is a plain brown square of animal fat and lye that functions as an emergency stain remover and also acts as a convenient doorstop. If you are extremely lucky, you might have a lavender sachet tucked among your fine linens to provide a very faint suggestion of cleanliness. But mostly, you will smell like a subtle mixture of laundry starch, chimney smoke, and whatever amount of anxiety you built up during the breakfast ritual. Deodorant. That is much more of a theoretical concept than an actual available product. The best you can truly hope for is to subtly cover any offensive body odours with a light dusting of cologne, or by simply never raising your arms above the level of your waist. Victorian etiquette conveniently insists on dainty, careful hand movements and delicately folded paper fans, most likely because nobody wishes to unleash what may be hiding under all those layers of heavy, hot fabric. If all of this completely fails, there still remains the reliable, ultimate solution. Blame the nearest dog. Blame the unfortunate weather. Blame the French entirely. Teeth represent an entirely different battleground altogether. Toothpaste is available, but it is typically sold as an abrasive powder, often flavoured with strong charcoal, harsh salt, or gritty chalk, and leaves your mouth feeling exactly like you just licked a dusty old chalkboard. Toothbrushes are constructed with bristles powerful enough to scrub barnacles off a sailing ship's hull, and any dental appointment is an adventure reserved solely for the truly desperate and incredibly brave. Dental floss. You are far more likely to be flossing with a stray thread you found attached to your stays. Yet despite this long, difficult process, the final result is a kind of weary, muted, passive elegance. You look perfectly acceptable, at least when viewed from a respectable social distance. Your hair is incredibly shiny, perhaps from a full month's worth of built-up oil. Your face is liberally dusted with powder for both enhancement and the effective concealment of facts. And your strong perfume is just potent enough to keep most people from asking awkward personal questions. In Victorian England, the appearance of being clean is infinitely more crucial than the actual reality of being clean. And if you ever have any lingering doubt, just remember that somewhere, someone is faithfully brushing their hair for the full 30 minutes and pretending not to notice that you have not had a proper bath since the last harvest season. You, however, are now truly ready to courageously face the long day. Oily roots, powdery scalp, and all. The true central highlight of your morning schedule is the entirely unavoidable round of dropping calling cards, those small engraved pieces of cardboard that serve to prove to your social peers that you are, in fact, still drawing breath and only mildly lacking in social skills. You will pay and receive enough visits to completely fill a complex business spreadsheet, all in the desperate, exhausting pursuit of avoiding being critically torn apart in the wrong drawing room. Let us be entirely clear about this. Social calls are not a choice you make. They are not done for any personal enjoyment. They are, in reality, the absolute core foundation of the entire Victorian social order, a never-ending, circular, mandatory cycle of quick visits, reciprocal return visits, obligatory thank you visits, sympathy visits, and on truly celebratory moments, the "I just moved in, please do not hate me" visit. At the very centre of this entire ritual is the calling card, that precise, stiff rectangle of heavy paper printed with your full name in a typeface so complex it looks like it might be secretly attempting to spell something using Morse code. The entire ritual begins immediately after your breakfast, when the family butler presents you with a silver tray completely bristling with all the collected cards. Each one represents a social obligation, a tiny, silent reminder that Lady Farnsworth stopped by. And if you fail to return the exact courtesy within 72 hours, you will be permanently labelled a complete hermit, a snob, or, worst of all, simply strange. Your own large supply of cards, freshly delivered from the local printer, sits patiently waiting, blank on the reverse side, ready for a desperate last-minute scribbled note, "So terribly sorry I missed you," or the occasional subtle passive-aggressive flourish. "My sincere apologies for last Tuesday, indisposed due to a sudden, strange confluence of bad weather and fate. Now the incredibly strategic portion of the day must begin. Calling is not a simple, casual stroll and quick knock on the door. It is a precisely timed, logistically challenging social operation. You must consult your small visiting book, a small, leather-bound personal journal, a document far more detailed and important than your actual financial records. In this sacred, meticulously detailed document, you carefully track who called when and what exact degree of attention each call specifically warrants. Failure to reciprocate within the appropriate short deadline means instant social death, so it feels less like keeping up with your actual close friends and much more like desperately trying not to become a humiliating cautionary tale at someone else's tea party. You set out wearing your most elegant visiting dress, a garment specifically chosen to signal that you only plan to stay for exactly 15 minutes, but are still unquestionably better dressed than anyone currently residing in the host's household. Gloves are absolutely mandatory. A suitable hat is obligatory, and a parasol functions as both a subtle defensive weapon and a privacy screen. You climb into the large family carriage, or, if you are particularly unlucky, set off entirely on foot, mentally preparing yourself for a long morning of completely vapid small talk and sitting ramrod straight on stiff sofas that seem to have been engineered by pessimistic orthopedic surgeons. Upon finally arriving at the very first house, you are ushered into the main drawing room by a servant who will, with a completely neutral expression, inform the lady of the house that Miss So-and-so is here to call. If you are extremely fortunate, she is actually ready to receive visitors. If she is not, you simply leave a calling card and swiftly move on to the next house, secretly feeling deeply relieved but forced to pretend you are completely devastated at having missed her. If she does appear, you are in for the true social test. 15 agonizing minutes of conversation as light as fine air and as precise and sharp as a duel with a sword. The daily weather, one's current health and mutual acquaintances are all perfectly safe, conversational subjects. Political discussions, personal finances, and your genuine personal opinions are strictly forbidden and dangerous. You cautiously sip your thin tea, nibble a small biscuit so dry it could easily be used as stable packing material, and try desperately not to drop a single crumb down the front of your pristine dress. If you can successfully manage all this while sitting with completely flawless posture and making just enough eye contact to appear genuinely interested, you are, by proper Victorian standards, successfully flourishing. And do not dare get too comfortable. There is a precise and extremely delicate choreography to these short social calls. Stay 1 minute longer than 15 minutes and you will be instantly perceived as overly eager and needy. Leave even a moment too quickly and you are instantly deemed cold and distant. Ask to use the private powder room and you might as well declare all-out war on the entire structure of etiquette itself. On particularly busy mornings you will squeeze in 6 or 7 such calls. Each one simply another opportunity to accidentally offend someone's third cousin twice removed. When you finally return to your own home, it is immediately time for the receiving portion of the entire day. Now you must be completely ready to greet incoming callers with a wide, welcoming smile, offer a small, exceedingly dry cake, and pretend you were not just moments ago actually hiding in the library, utterly dreading any human interaction. For every single card you manage to collect, another slot on your social to-do list is completely filled. The entire process never truly ends. It only actually resets. Somewhere, someone is always just about to take offence, and every drawing room is a silent, critical arena for your reputation. In the end, the ultimate true winner of the Victorian social call is the person who has the biggest collected stack of cards, the emptiest upcoming schedule, and the most perfectly refined ability to make it all appear completely effortless while secretly yearning for a day with absolutely no visitors at all. Now it is time to sit quietly by the largest window and embroider something you honestly do not care about while making just enough light conversation to avoid all accusations of being moody or sulking. Needlework is not simply a quiet hobby. It is actually a silent, intense competition for the title of most patient martyr in your small social circle. If you are picturing a peaceful morning with soft, gentle sunlight filtering through the lace curtains as you lovingly stitch delicate, perfect roses onto a clean handkerchief, allow me to immediately correct that lovely vision. Needlework in the proper Victorian home is far less a creative, artistic pursuit and much more an exhausting marathon of sheer endurance, strict etiquette observance, and emotional self-suppression. It is the Victorian equivalent of both a comforting fidget toy and open passive aggression. Everyone is currently performing it, everyone is pretending to wholeheartedly enjoy the experience, and everyone is silently praying not to stab themselves with the dangerously sharp end of a tiny tapestry needle. Your necessary tools are meticulously arranged on a small side table. An embroidery hoop, a small selection of thimbles, tiny sharp scissors so keen they could slice through familial tension, and a rainbow of colourful silk threads. There is an unfinished sampler nearby, proudly displaying cheerful little mottos like "Home Sweet Home" and "A Stitch in Time Saves 9" next to what you secretly believe is a coded cry for help. If you are truly considered skilled, you might attempt to make a large chair cover, a lacy doily intended to protect the expensive furniture from gentlemen's hair oil and presumably any last remaining will to live you may possess. The pressure to perform is intense. Your mother and 3 aunts are all present, all working with the frantic energy of Olympic athletes and the serene facial expressions of saints who are currently auditioning for martyrdom. The conversation is light and entirely calculated, yet slightly malicious. How many small stitches per minute are you currently managing, my dear? That particular border design is incredibly ambitious. My goodness, your French knots are so rustic and uneven. The entire competition is never stated explicitly, but everyone in the room knows exactly who is currently winning. It is inevitably whoever looks the most serenely calm while methodically sewing an entire alphabet onto a small napkin, with eyesight so strained they are temporarily seeing double images. But this is far more than just simple busy work. Needlework is actually the only socially acceptable way for proper women to quietly fill hours that would otherwise be spent dangerously questioning the ultimate futility of their entire existence, or, even worse, having original, dangerous opinions. While your fingers are safely occupied, you can easily eavesdrop on private conversations, politely tune out tedious relatives, or perfect your serene, industrious expression for the moment the minister drops by unannounced. If your current embroidery project is truly intricate, you possess a perfect, legitimate excuse to avoid the more dangerous conversational topics, such as your marriage prospects or why you still have not completely mastered the piano. Occasionally, someone will agree to read aloud to the group, uplifting literature only, of course, while the rest of you gently nod politely and attempt to avoid sewing a simple flower stem straight through your skirt. Novels are deeply, profoundly frowned upon. Too emotionally provocative. Poetry is extremely risky. too many complex feelings, so you inevitably end up dutifully listening to a dull selection from moral lessons for young ladies while you nervously attempt to execute a perfect chain stitch that does not look like an earthworm experiencing a nervous panic attack. The great unspoken rule of this entire process is never to allow your own hands to be completely idle. Idleness, after all, is the first dangerous step toward moral decay, or, even worse, being openly accused of laziness by your own grandmother. So you continue to sew countless handkerchiefs, long table runners, mysterious little sachets no one ever actually ends up using, and enough pillowcases to completely suffocate a small town. The ultimate driving singular goal? To fill a large hope chest, a massive trunk full of embroidered linens ready for the marriage you may or may not truly desire, but are certainly expected to prepare for with the unwavering enthusiasm of someone packing for a terrifying trip to the icy Antarctic. But needlework presents its own completely unique dangers. Dropping your tiny needle means desperately crawling on your knees, frantically hunting for the miniature metallic saboteur before the housemaid's foot can find it first. Pricked fingers are a daily and incredibly common reality, often hidden with stoic dignity, or, if you are feeling particularly dramatic, displayed with a deep, martyr-like sigh for maximum sympathy from the others. There's also the constant, looming, genuine threat of severe eye strain. Victorian women routinely went half-blind by the time they reached 40 years of age, but at least the chair covers lived on to be admired. And through it all, you must continually maintain a steady, slightly glazed, distant smile. Because in the strange, intense world of extreme embroidery, it is never about finding true enjoyment. It is entirely about surviving the seemingly endless afternoon, one tiny, perfect stitch at a time, and successfully proving to everyone present that when it comes to patience, nobody suffers quite as beautifully as you do. If you are fortunate enough to secretly steal an hour completely alone, you might cautiously read a novel, ideally one deemed appropriately uplifting for your gender. Unless you are feeling truly rebellious and manage to sneak a quick, exciting peek at the latest sensation novel, being completely sure to hide it under a massive, heavy copy of Pilgrim's Progress for total plausible deniability. Reading in Victorian England is a surprisingly quietly subversive act, especially when it is being performed by an unmarried woman. It resembles less a simple amusement and more a confidential task carried out with the stillness and stress of an agent in the field. You steal a quick look toward the doorway, listening sharply for the recognizable drag of your mother's arrival or the deep, cautioning cough of a servant. On the surface, you sit demurely in your chair, a volume like Moral Philosophy or The Young Lady's Guide to Proper Behaviour resting open on your dress. But concealed beneath that proper cover is something far more exciting. Perhaps Wilkie Collins, or the newest parts of Lady Audley's Secret released as a serial. You naturally take chances. The specific books you select are a statement about your social beliefs. Moral books, memoirs, religious speeches and essays on flowers are anticipated and boring, like unseasoned food. These are the volumes you place prominently on your nightstand for visitors, or when Great Aunt Millicent arrives and wants to test your knowledge of spiritual beliefs. But secretly you crave a little more stimulation, a poem with genuine feeling, a story featuring a heroine who acts more and faints less. Or on days when you feel especially rebellious, a forbidden French novel, badly translated by someone who clearly missed the real message. Reading, of course, adheres to rules. You must sit perfectly straight, ankles crossed, appearing composed, the established signal for "do not interrupt me." But also, do not appear to enjoy this too much. If you let out a tiny giggle, a quick gasp, or show a scandalous flush, you risk attracting your supervisor, who will descend like a hunting bird to check your book for inappropriate influences, emotional outbursts, or, worst of all, a functioning imagination. At times, you are expected to read passages aloud to the family, a circumstance best compared to a difficult hostage negotiation. You carefully select sections that lack intensity, illegal acts, or anything even slightly suggestive. You are reading for the ethical education of the group, not for the private thrill of a late-night rendezvous on a remote, wild heath. Any misstep, such as a nervous titter at a double meaning, can and will be used against you during the family's official review. And yet, despite the scrutiny, reading serves as an escape. Within the covers of a cherished novel, you can visit Italy, climb the Alps, or solve crimes in foggy London, all without having to leave the parlour. You can experience love a dozen times before lunch, perform acts of serious bravery, or, if truly bored, dream about a world where you wear trousers and prepare your own breakfast. Books also operate as illicit currency among your companions. You exchange the most controversial titles beneath your needlework, pass notes about the finest parts, and have quiet disagreements about whether Mr. Darcy is actually fit for marriage, or just an overly reserved person with personal space issues. Some books are so infamous they are only referred to by secret code names. The Blue Book is hidden behind the world map, while that awful French volume is tucked inside a hollowed-out copy of Prayers for Young Ladies. You become a member of a covert library network, operating with the complete stealth of a Victorian espionage ring, and for all the restrictions, the genuine achievement is securing a full, uninterrupted hour with your preferred book. You settle into a bright window seat, lose yourself in someone else's drama, and for a short time forget that your own biggest problem is not being caught staring at a man with side whiskers. When the hour concludes, you mark your place, hide the evidence, and return to the world of appropriate activities, your spirit a little lighter and your desire for trouble slightly increased. In the Victorian era, reading is not merely a leisure activity, it is a small act of protest, a private love affair, and, if you are lucky, a view of the world beyond the next social call. Yes, there are domestic staff, but they don't simply manage themselves. Imagine being in charge of a group of workers who are all secretly convinced you have no idea what you are doing. You inspect the utensils, sample the soup, and try hard not to weep when you find dirt on the staircase railing. Running a Victorian home is not delicate housekeeping. It is high-level management with extra layers of constraint. Your morning as the household's chief executive does not begin with a meeting in an office, but with a daily report given by a tired housekeeper who lists updates as if describing troop movements in a major conflict. The laundry has frozen solid outside. The cook is angry again, and someone found the young male servant sleeping in the coal storage area. If you thought you would just float through the day wearing lace and jewels, you have drastically misjudged the demands of this position. The staff list looks like something from a literary classic. Chambermaids, serving maids, kitchen maids, cooks, butlers, footmen, and that mysterious general assistant. You are expected to know every name, remember their important dates, and instantly recall who is currently angry with whom. Make an error, and you will face the kind of domestic uprising that can only be settled with favours, usually involving sweet snacks and an urgent reading of Mrs. Beeton's Guide to Management. Your first obligation is the morning inspection. This turns into a formal walkthrough, with no fewer than 2 maids following you, creating an atmosphere of apprehension. You confirm that beds are made with military precision, that the sitting room cushions are perfectly plumped, and that no one, absolutely no one, has tracked muddy footprints across the main stairway. Every floor is noted with a sigh and a gentle correction, because raising your voice means the entire household will spend the next week talking about your character. Down in the kitchen area, you taste the stock, not for enjoyment, but as a defence against a culinary protest. If it is over-seasoned, the cook looks at you as if you have personally insulted her heritage. If it lacks flavour, you are offered more salt with a smile sharp enough to slice a loaf. Menu planning becomes a negotiation. What can you present that is impressive, affordable, and unlikely to start a major social conflict? The food storage room feels like a cooking competition where the hidden ingredients are last night's root vegetables and intense pressure. Handling the finances is a risky job. The household accounts are a difficult puzzle of bills, IOUs, and ledgers written in a handwriting that could be mistaken for ancient symbols. You try to keep track of spending on lamp oil, meat, and enough stiffener to make your table linens stand on their own. Heaven forbid you go over budget. Nothing results in an emergency meeting with your husband faster than an unexpected extra expense on heating coal. Then comes the drama. The maid crying because the butler moved her cleaning supplies. The footman with a mysterious injury that happened near the silver cabinet. Again. And the ongoing puzzle of who keeps leaving half-eaten cookies behind the clock. Every argument tests your ability to mediate. Your leadership style becomes a combination of caregiver, authority, counsellor, and gentle tyrant. Despite appearances, there is no time off. You are available for every emergency, every stuck lock, every unidentifiable mark on the parlour rug. When company arrives, you transform into a director, leading a perfect show of greetings, refreshments, and perfectly timed observations about the weather. If the meal goes well, and nobody sets the curtains on fire, you count it as a triumph. All of this, remember, is done while wearing multiple layers of undergarments and a corset, maintaining a happy expression, and never once admitting you would rather be hiding under the stairs with the house cat. So the next time someone says, "But you have help," remember that you are not relaxing. You are operating an empire where small particles of dirt are rebels and a serving spoon is your royal scepter. Congratulations. You are a chief executive, and your performance review is delivered whenever your mother-in-law makes a surprise visit. Your main daily practice involves verbal sparring, avoiding personal questions, offering exactly the right amount of witty commentary, and never, ever admitting you genuinely do not care about the weather. Every conversation is an intense lesson in not offending anyone who could destroy your social standing with a single raised eyebrow. Let's be honest. The true battlefield of Victorian society is not fought with swords or even with dinner knives, but with carefully chosen words. The ability to suggest everything and nothing at the same time is the most valuable skill any woman can master. The competition is sophisticated. If chess involved more lace and fewer actual moves, it would perfectly resemble Victorian conversation. You are not simply talking. You are creating a defence of proper conduct, a curtain of politeness, and when things get serious, a distraction of talk about flowers. You start your day with practice rounds, exchanging pleasantries with your household at the morning meal, each comment sharpened with a subtle hidden meaning. "You seem quite rested, dear. I observe you managed the corset again. Did you sleep soundly?" Translation: I heard every tiny noise and know you hid that book under your pillow. Every question becomes a puzzle, every reply a minor international incident waiting to happen. As you move into the social hours, the risks increase. The drawing room is your battle space. Here you meet a series of friends, relatives, and that one neighbour who is frankly more interested in your laundry line than your opinions. Topics are carefully controlled. The weather is always a safe subject, unless of course it is raining hard and someone's new hat has been ruined, in which case the atmosphere can quickly turn hostile. Gardening remains a reliable choice, but proceed with caution. Complimenting the wrong type of rose can lead to an entire afternoon of quietly aggressive talk about plants. Intelligence is necessary, but only in small amounts. Too sharp, and you risk being called unsuitable. Too uninteresting, and you are dull. The key is to drop just enough smart remarks to show you have a mind, but not enough to suggest you might actually use it for anything dangerous, like having original thoughts. Practice phrases like, "How engaging and isn't that extraordinary?" which work for almost any situation, from hearing about a neighbour's new carriage to enduring a long lecture about root vegetables. Then come the conversational traps. Someone asks, "When will you be travelling to Bath this season?" What they actually mean is, "Why are you still in town?" A well-meaning aunt asks about your needlework. Is it finished? but the correct answer is always almost aren't. Thank you for your interest. Never, I would prefer to eat the thread. The technique involves answering without giving information, replying without revealing anything, and above all, avoiding giving anyone something genuinely interesting to repeat. But conversation is not just for defense, it is also for offense. Deliver a carefully planned compliment, and you can improve your own standing. Your daughter's piano practice is showing great progress works even if last night's performance sounded like two angry cats fighting in a musical instrument. Offer a subtle change of subject when conversation moves into risky territory. Oh, what a lovely vase. Did that come from your trip to the coast? If everything else fails, pretend to cough, drop a teacup, or show sudden, intense interest in the wall design. The biggest danger, of course, is an unintended embarrassment. One poorly timed joke, one honest opinion, and your reputation could be ruined by the next day's letter delivery. A relative's careless mention of a book could become a family emergency. Disagreeing with a priest, laughing too loudly, or being seen alone with the wrong male relative can all result in you becoming the main course at the next gossip session. The solution? Smile, agree, and remember that silence is often the most effective comeback. By the end of the day, after spending hours navigating conversational landmines, you are tired, mentally sharper than a lawyer, but emotionally drained. You have protected your secrets, given out compliments, avoided all talk of politics, and managed not to admit that you honestly do not care if it rains or not. Congratulations. You have mastered the skill of Victorian conversation, saying everything required and nothing at all in 4 words or less. Physical exercise is not about developing muscle. It is about moving gracefully in circles while trying not to seem bored. Walking outside is permitted if you are supervised, covered correctly, and resistant to insults from children on the street. Victorian fitness focuses less on using up energy and more on passing the time in the most elegant way possible. The phrase taking a turn about the room does not mean anything as extreme as aerobic exercise or even a fast walk. It means exactly what it sounds like. You stand up from your sewing, gather your heavy skirts and start moving around the edge of the largest available space, the drawing room, the music room, or for the very determined, the long hallway, at a careful pace. This is not for heart health. It is about appearing slightly out of breath, but never actually sweating. Naturally, you are not alone in your indoor circuits. Your mother, sisters, and at least one cousin have joined the line, making the entire event look like the world's slowest parade. Conversation must remain light, volume must be kept low, and posture must be flawless. Slouching is for the weak, or worse, for the French. You check your appearance in the mirror every half lap to make sure your hair is still secure, and your expression is set to pleasantly attentive, even as your mind begs for an exercise machine and noise-cancelling headphones. If you grow tired of this endless oval, you might be allowed an outdoor walk if the weather and proper etiquette permit. This requires a process only slightly less complicated than preparing for an Arctic trip. First, you must find a chaperone, a requirement that ensures you are protected from both the weather and any lurking dangerous bachelors. Then comes the wrapping: shawl, gloves, bonnet, heavy coat, and the absolutely necessary umbrella. The goal is to step outside looking like a moving monument of wool and ribbon, with only a small area of your face visible between your hat brim and scarf. Once outside, the air is refreshing and healthy, and so are the critical looks from every passing neighbour. A successful walk means returning home neither red-faced nor dishevelled, with not a single hair out of place and your shoes only slightly dusted with dirt. Should you go farther, perhaps to the park or along the main walkway, you will be joined by other women on similar outings, everyone quietly pretending this counts as physical activity while exchanging looks that say, "If I trip on this paving stone and fall into a puddle, please just leave me here." And do not forget the constantly watching eyes of small children and poor street urchins who offer running commentary. Look at her fancy hat, miss. Be careful. Don't fall asleep while standing. You keep your head high and glide past, pretending not to hear them. In a way, this serves as a workout for your social graces as much as for your physical self. If you happen to feel a bit more spirited, a few activities are permitted. You can play croquet on the lawn, provided you don't swing your mallet with too much force. If you are genuinely defiant, a brisk horseback ride might appeal, but even this should be kept to a respectable walk and performed under constant supervision. Any activity that is too strenuous risks inducing perspiration, and perspiring is strictly forbidden unless you are in a dark private room with a doctor's consent. Ultimately, Victorian exercise is about the appearance of effort. You return home with cheeks only slightly flushed, posture notably straighter, and announce that you feel completely revived. This is simply code for, thank goodness that ordeal is complete. There is no gym membership required. All you need is a few 100 feet of well-kept floor, and the iron will not to surrender to boredom. You sit back down, your pulse exactly the same as before, and quietly ponder whether walking in circles is perhaps a metaphor for the entire Victorian life. Lots of motion, but no genuine advancement. And just like that, you have fulfilled your daily exercise requirement without shedding a single drop of sweat or violating any rule. The afternoon is dedicated to music practice, piano, harp, or singing, ideally all three, and preferably performed poorly. Every incorrect note is a subtle reminder that your true value is found in your social elegance, not in your musical ability. Victorian music rehearsal is less about becoming an accomplished virtuoso and more about serving as pleasant background noise. The family expects the quiet tinkling of a piano to waft from the drawing room. It is as much a marker of middle-class status as lace curtains or an endless supply of potted greenery. You, however, approach the keyboard with the eagerness of someone facing their own execution, though this execution involves sheet music and an audience of critical relatives. The piano itself is a Victorian marvel, tall, gleaming, and perpetually out of tune due to the volatile British weather. You sit up straight and rigid, ankles crossed, hands perfectly placed, that is, until you play your first wrong note, at which point your youngest sibling releases a dramatic sigh of frustrated artistic judgment. You labour through the scales, your fingers stumbling over passages that resemble a terrified small animal trying to claw its way out of the keys. Your music teacher, if present, hovers and taps the sheet music with a pencil, managing to convey both unending patience and profound inner misery. The same applies to the harp or singing. The harp is an instrument invented by a person who clearly harboured a deep dislike for other people's backs. You attempt a simple melody and rapidly realise the sound you are making is less angelic serenade and more an angry cat wrestling with a length of rope. As for singing, you project your voice with all the courage of someone who knows Aunt Gertrude is listening from the next room, her ears sharpened by decades of mediocre community theatre and thwarted dreams. Mistakes are inevitable. Wrong note, blame the weather, miss the rhythm. The sheet music must have slid out of place. A clashing chord? Clearly the piano is defective. In Victorian life, the aim is not to achieve musical mastery. The objective is to demonstrate the correct balance of effort, humility, and a willingness to be gently embarrassed. If you are a genius, that's splendid. If you are not, simply smile and hope no one remembers your attempt at green sleeves. Music, above all, is about establishing the appropriate reputation. You perform for guests, for family, for anyone who will listen, or at least pretend to. Your reward for surviving another rendition of the Blue Danube is a flurry of polite applause and a gentle suggestion to practice just a little more, darling. You may secretly yearn to set fire to the sheet music and move to Paris to become a cabaret star, but you know better. In Victorian society, quiet suffering is always preferable to outright rebellion, And just in case you thought you could avoid it, every respectable young woman is expected to play at least one instrument. Extra points are awarded for 2, or for pretending to enjoy a small amount of light composition, usually in the form of a waltz that sounds suspiciously similar to the last 3 waltzes you wrote. You might share music with acquaintances, all while maintaining the subtle facade that your hand occasionally slips onto a slightly bolder piece, like a forbidden polka. If you are particularly unlucky, a family recital is scheduled. The drawing room is meticulously rearranged, the best chairs are dusted, and the entire household is summoned to observe your struggle with Beethoven. The applause is always civil, the criticism always veiled. You played with such strong feeling, dear. Perhaps a little less next time. When the trial is finally concluded, you close the piano lid with a sigh of relief, your fingers tingling and your ego only marginally bruised. You survived. You may never receive an invitation to the Royal Albert Hall, but at least you managed not to snap a string or inadvertently spark a polka rebellion. Congratulations! You have completed your obligation as the designated living background music for the Victorian home. And if you ever question your value, just remember this. No one ever criticised a young woman for playing too softly. But playing too proficiently, that is practically a scandal. Maintaining social ties with your friends and family requires composing endless letters, each one longer than a modern-day novel and just about as exciting as reading the user manual for a foot spa. Sales of stationery must have been astronomical. If you considered modern-day texting to be tiring, then welcome to the Victorian universe, where catching up demands several hours of elegant penmanship, half a bottle of ink, and the definite threat of hand cramps so severe you begin to envy the household pet. Every acquaintance, every cousin, and every distant godmother anticipates a handwritten update, delivered with maximum flourish and absolutely 0 spelling errors. In an age before spell check, every letter you dispatch is a potential public relations disaster, a minor literary masterpiece that will be scrutinised and saved. And if you are truly unfortunate, it might be read aloud at future family gatherings. You start by selecting the correct paper. This is not simply a piece of generic paper. We are talking about cream-coloured monogram sheets kept in a box so sophisticated it practically looks down on your messy handwriting. The ink must be black, or perhaps a deep blue-black if you are feeling slightly rebellious. The quill pen, because yes, it is still the proper tool, must be sharpened to a point so exact it could function as a surgical instrument. God help you if you create a smudge. Even a tiny blot of ink will be a source of worry for weeks. The first hurdle? The greeting. My dearest cousin Arabella, I hope this letter finds you enjoying the best of health and spirits. Victorian manners demand the opening paragraph be both elaborate and utterly devoid of actual meaning. 10 lines in, you have thoroughly covered the current weather, the status of your mother's nerves, and the remarkable hardiness of your houseplants. You have not yet even approached the actual reason for your correspondence. Next, the main substance. This is where the real struggle commences. You must detail every significant event. Visitors, sicknesses, dances attended, marriage proposals made, marriage proposals refused, servants hired, servants dismissed, and if you are truly desperate, the minor excitement of acquiring a new tablecloth. Each detail is extended like an episode of a drawn-out dramatic serial, only with more passive-aggressive observations. Mrs. Worthington's tea was a splendid event, although some might argue her lemon cakes were more aspirational than palatable. Translation: I barely survived it. Please send immediate help. But the genuine purpose of letter writing is to regulate information. You want to keep your friends close, your family nearer, and your rivals completely confused. Subtle brags are carefully woven into seemingly humble statements. I've been quite engaged with my embroidery, as my sampler for Lady Highmore's charitable event will be put on display at the county fair. You intentionally forget to mention that you pricked yourself with the embroidery needle no less than 6 times. Halfway through the 3rd page, your writing hand is cramping, your ink supply is dwindling, and you have developed a newfound appreciation for the simple abbreviation. Unfortunately, there is no equivalent to LOL in Victorian communication. Every sentence must be a complete thought, and every feeling must be meticulously detailed. If you wish to include a joke, it must be disguised as an anecdote concerning your neighbour's goose. I beg your pardon for my meagre attempt at wit, but I could not help but laugh when... Then comes the closing. Victorian etiquette manuals recommend at least 4 complimentary phrases. With the sincerest affection, your ever-devoted friend, I remain as always, your humble servant. And for good measure, may Providence look kindly upon you and your family. By the end, your signature is nearly illegible, and your hand is shaking like a carriage travelling on a rough country road. The letter is finally finished, but your task is not yet complete. You must fold it precisely. Address the envelope using calligraphy that would impress a monastic scribe, seal it with a small amount of wax, monogrammed naturally, and entrust it to a footman for delivery. No immediate delivery here. Your words will be transported by coach, by train, and by the sheer force of social custom. And then the process starts over. Each letter you answer inspires 3 more in reply, each one longer and more indirect than the last. You begin to suspect that this is the secret way Victorians prepared for marathons, not through running, but through unending correspondence. Congratulations, you have finished your daily Victorian texting regimen. No emojis are required, just the faint, lingering pain of carpal tunnel syndrome and the hope that perhaps next week someone will invent the postcard. At some point, you must bravely enter the drawing room, where everyone gathers to quietly judge each other's clothing, trade gossip, and show an eerie skill for sipping tea without ever blinking. It is like a silent auction for social status, and you are the item currently under inspection. Welcome to the daily social obstacle course. The drawing room is the Victorian equivalent of the modern group chat, only everyone is far more formally dressed, and the read receipts are conveyed through the subtle arch of an eyebrow. There is a precise, careful choreography to the afternoon assembly. You enter with the composure of someone stepping onto the stage of the world's least thrilling beauty pageant. You smile, just enough to appear pleasant, but not so much that anyone might suspect you are secretly planning your escape. Seats are chosen with all the political calculation of a Senate debate, too close to the fireplace, and you risk being accused of monopolizing the heat. Too near the window, and you are either fishing for compliments about your skin tone or listening in on the groundskeeper. The safest spot is a solid armchair, ideally one with a direct sight line to the tea service, and at least 2 potential exit paths. Once you are seated, the genuine competitions begin. The first event, the wardrobe inspection. Everyone subtly assesses everyone else's attire. Hats are analysed, shawls are ranked, and buttons are discreetly counted. Your dress is last season's shade of lavender, a risky choice. Your hemline is a 1/4 inch too high. Prepare for an intense wave of silent disapproval from Mrs. Henley, who still recalls your notorious ankle exposure at the recent garden party. Tea is served with military precision, the hostess pouring without spilling a single drop, her hands steady despite the underlying tension in the air. Biscuits are circulated, each one taken with a thank you whispered so softly it might as well be mind-reading. You make every effort not to scatter shortbread crumbs onto your lap. Last week's minor accident is still a major topic of discussion across 3 counties. And then the conversation. Appropriate topics are selected with the precision of a master surgeon. The weather, the rose bushes, the subtle drama surrounding Lady Bracknell's missing pet parakeet. The challenge is to say as much as possible while revealing as little as necessary. Any mention of money, sickness, or, God forbid, personal feelings is met with the kind of silence typically reserved for serious funerals. If someone accidentally lets slip a piece of truly scandalous gossip, it is immediately covered up with a vague comment about the price of coal or a detailed discussion of different types of embroidery thread. Children, if they are present, are expected to be observed and not heard. They linger near the doorway, desperate to leave, like unpaid interns at a corporate meeting who have skipped lunch. Elderly family members doze with one eye open, always ready to leap into action should anyone dare to mention politics. All the while, there is an ongoing, silent contest. Who can project the most unbothered composure? It is a battle fought with posture, with eye contact, and with the ability to consume a biscuit without leaving crumbs on the rug. One poorly timed yawn and you face a full week of concerned inquiries about your health. And of course there is the gossip minefield. Information is exchanged in hushed tones and sidelong glances. Who is engaged, who has fallen ill, who had the audacity to laugh too loudly while at church. The stories are embellished with every retelling until what started as an innocent walk in the park is transformed into a story of social ruin and possibly a challenge to a duel. When the tea becomes cold and the conversation has cycled back to the topic of the weather. For the third time, it is time to make your departure. This too is a carefully choreographed dance. To leave too soon is rude. To stay too long suggests desperation. The strategy is to smoothly exit with a slight nod, a soft goodbye, and the merest hint that you have far more engaging commitments awaiting your attention. You have survived the drawing room. You are exhausted, over-caffeinated, and slightly stiff from maintaining a perfectly straight posture for 2 solid hours. But you did it. You faced the social gauntlet and emerged with your reputation mostly preserved. In the world of Victorian society, simply getting close to success means something entirely different than it does today. Do you need a new hat or a discreet bottle of hair restorative? It's time to brave the public world and spend hours pretending the cost of lace does not make you feel faint. Remain vigilant. Shopkeepers can sense uncertainty and social discomfort from several blocks away. Victorian shopping is not, despite what popular publications might suggest, an act of personal freedom and individual expression. It is a carefully orchestrated, anxiety-inducing public ritual with the intense atmosphere of a gambling establishment and price tags to match. Your morning starts with a list written in your most elegant hand. Hat, gloves, a spool of thread, perhaps some unusual sweets. If you are feeling both adventurous and well-funded, your mother reviews your list. Then, for additional security, she questions you on the difference between decorations that are appropriate and those that are considered too gaudy. Before you step outside, the ritual commences. You must dress properly for shopping, meaning your best walking dress, gloves, and an expression that suggests, "I could purchase this entire store, yet I will still negotiate the price of a single needle." Any indication of a lack of proper appearance risks being ignored by the clerks, or, worse yet, enduring a long lecture on the importance of thrift from Mrs. Henderson, who is absolutely listening from behind her tower of embroidered napkins. Stepping out, you join the stream of buyers on the packed main thoroughfare, everyone sharing your dread, each one pretending not to assess the other's choice of head coverings. Your close companion remains nearby like an attendant, armed with both helpful advice and a thirst for local gossip. The retail windows shine with attractive wares, silk ribbons, fluffy bonnets, and unidentified remedies promising everything from a flawless complexion to a wedding within 2 weeks. Inside the establishment, the real scene begins. The owner stands waiting at the counter, already sizing you up. Are you a customer ready to spend, or just sampling the free rose water? Do you have enough funds for quality lace, or should you be gently directed toward the cheaper stock? Your hands shake slightly as you request, only a bit of ribbon if they could spare it. You hold back a cry at the cost, roughly equivalent to 1 week of house warmth, or 3 months of backache from embroidery. Buying headwear specifically becomes a test of diplomacy. The assistant brings out options rapidly, each one grander than the last, all the while subtly hinting that sensible ladies prefer simpler styles. You agree knowingly, as if you have always understood that deep green velvet suits the ambitious while pale blue silk is ideal for the shy. You try on bonnets, examine your reflection in a slightly wavy mirror, and pretend to contemplate as your assistant quietly hopes you avoid anything that might attract unwanted notice, like a conspicuous feather. But the matter is larger than just clothes. Every item you acquire makes a public declaration. Select an extravagant ribbon and risk the milliner's stern disapproval and local rumours. Choose dull brown gloves, and everyone will assume you are grieving, or worse, cutting expenses. The safest course is to select something plain, pay with exact change, and trust the shopkeeper does not attempt to sell you the newest popular hair treatment. No, you definitely don't want your hair smelling like a floral arrangement. A dreadful realization hits you soon after. Every single item purchased brings feelings of remorse. Did you spend excessively? Have you ruined the family finances? Is possessing 2 pairs of gloves at once actually unnecessary? You exit the shop with your purchase wrapped in paper and an immediate desire to apologize to your father, your savings, and perhaps your unborn great-grandchildren. Back outside, the sun feels brighter and other shoppers less hostile. You walk toward home clutching your packages, your face warm from both the struggle and the financial anxiety. Shopping, you understand, is the ultimate balancing act of the Victorian era. One error in buying makes you a public warning. One perfect purchase is praised for years. You return to your residence, place the parcels on the entry table, and vow you will never shop again. At least not until the next special on unusual plumes. Retail therapy, Victorian fashion, highest worry, lowest satisfaction, and at least 3 new stories. In the parlour, the focus of afternoon tea is less about drinking and more about surviving an ordeal of miniature cakes, social rules, and relatives eager to assess your chances of finding a husband. No, you are not allowed another small pastry unless you also accept a complete serving of personal criticism. In Victorian households, the afternoon tea is not relaxation, it is a ritual, a meticulously planned social obstacle course that would intimidate even experienced fighters. You step into the parlour to the sound of fine china ringing, the sweet, demanding scent of fresh baked goods, and a room full of family whose only worries seem to be your future, your waist measurement, and the correct way to consume a cucumber sandwich. First, the seating. Aunt Martha always secures the seat nearest the teapot, perfectly placed to claim the first, and most importantly, the biggest piece of dessert. You attempt to locate a secure spot, not close enough to become the main subject for questions, yet not so distant as to appear secretive even when you are. The youngest children stand near the sweet tarts, ready to attack the moment the adults look away. Everyone else sits on the edge of their seat, alert, proper, and quietly planning the quickest route to the preserves and cream. Next comes the pouring of tea, a ceremony so strict it makes a formal church service look casual. The host keeps one eye on the pot, the other on her company, ready to catch anyone daring to put sugar in before milk, an error only slightly less severe than theft. You accept your cup with a polite word, stir precisely 3 revolutions, and sip quietly regardless of the heat. Pity the person who dips a cake when Aunt Martha is present. Dipping, in her view, is the origin of all social ruin. The food and beverage, in the meantime, serve as both a pleasure and a hazard. Plates appear with neat lines of small sandwiches, crusts removed, fillings suspiciously mild, and towers of baked goods dusted with enough sugar to conceal the taste of quiet disappointment. The selection of sweets is impressive, but be careful not to take a piece larger than your allotted portion. Every bite is observed, every small crumb judged, and every second scones secretly counted by the family's unofficial calorie tracker. Yet tea is about more than just eating. It requires conversation, or more accurately, intense questioning in front of observers. As your mouth fills, Aunt Martha attacks. So, my dear, when is the marriage? I have wondered since you reached 16. Have you considered Lord Hamilton? He maintains a sufficient income for someone so ordinary. My efforts in finding you a match are the only thing protecting you from lifelong singleness. You avoid the topic gracefully with well-rehearsed diversion tactics. Oh, I am quite busy with my handiwork, Aunt. What pleasant weather we are enjoying, wouldn't you say? Is that a small bird in the garden? Any distraction will suffice. Meanwhile, your cousins smile into their teacups, having already completed their own periods of interrogation, or even better, having married and become the questioners themselves. When talk slows, someone inevitably brings up the latest local scandal. A servant who ran away, a neighbour's dog caught destroying the flower bed, or, heaven forbid, your imagined affection for the church leader's son. The gossip blends with the rising steam from the teapot, sweetened with sugar and hurtful intent, yet somehow you must endure it. The scones disappear, the cake is finished, and Aunt Martha, briefly satisfied, moves on to finding fault with someone else's seated posture. You escape the moment manners allow, your nerves strained but whole, vowing never to attend tea again until tomorrow when the entire routine is repeated. Afternoon tea, where drinking remains optional but survival is absolutely necessary. Your afternoons are reserved for charitable activities, which mainly involve sitting in cold church gathering places, pretending to care for orphaned children and sewing things no orphan ever requested. Victorian charity is less about changing lives and more about elevating your reputation. In a community where being idle is a shame and self-improvement is everyone's side hustle, doing good deeds turns into complicated public performance. And the location is always the same, the local church or community room where the temperature is best described as deeply chilling, and the interior consists mainly of uncomfortable folding chairs, serious-looking portraits, and a faint odour of old wool. You arrive on time, your arms filled with remarkable piles of unfinished knitting, rolls of simple fabric, and at least one copy of Moral Lessons for the Young. Around you, a gathering of ladies settles into the important work of relieving poverty, which mostly means arguing over who deserves assistance, the worthy poor versus the merely unlucky, and which local family's children are most in need of warm socks. The actual orphans are nowhere in sight, presumably living their lives far from itchy blankets and unwanted advice. The first item on the schedule is always a meeting led by the minister's wife or the town's most demanding older female. Reports are read aloud, strategies are developed, and you discuss the annual charity sale arrangements, a confusion of decorative items, homemade baked goods, and embroidered bookmarks. Someone suggests a cake stall. Someone else objects, mentioning last year's fruitcake almost causing a dental emergency. Someone suggests a lottery. A third person protests, worried it might encourage gambling among the lower classes. Then the sewing begins. You are assigned to hem pillowcases for the local clinic or stitch initials on blankets for unknown recipients. You wonder privately if these items ever reach their intended destinations or if they just accumulate in the church closet, waiting for the next group of helpful volunteers. No one ever bothers to ask the orphans what they actually need. Certainly not another annoying scarf. Of course, the true purpose of this assembly is social connection. The sewing circle functions less as a humanitarian machine and more as an exclusive social club with added buttons. Over the gentle sound of knitting needles, local events and major scandals are shared in quiet voices. Did you hear about Miss Peterson's embarrassing incident with the milk delivery man? Lady Morrison's new hat is truly shocking. And naturally, has anyone seen the assistant minister lately? He appeared rather pale. If you are feeling defiant, you bring up international causes, hungry children in distant conflicts, orphans in neighbouring countries. but these receive polite acknowledgement and a quick return to local chatter. There is always one woman who takes her charitable work too seriously. She brings diagrams, organises competitions for the most handkerchiefs completed, and once suggested making house calls to personally deliver socks to a widower, which everyone agreed was going too far. You, meanwhile, struggle to keep your stitches straight while fighting yawns and occasionally pricking your finger just for a moment of feeling. As the afternoon ends, there is tea, lukewarm and served from a chipped pot, along with dry biscuits and a talk on the virtues of self-denial. You nod wisely, fighting the desire to ask if you could deny yourself directly into a warm bath. The minister thanks everyone for their hard work. Someone makes a joke about inactive ladies, and you collect your sewing and quietly leave, your cheeks pink from a mix of small success and extreme boredom. Well done. Another afternoon spent helping the world one insignificant seam at a time. You may never see the results of your good deeds, but you have certainly given the town something to discuss. Until next week's meeting, if you are a mother, an aunt, or an unfortunate older sister, you are responsible for small people with strong opinions. This involves guiding, praising, and arranging peace treaties with individuals who still believe in imaginary beings. Victorian children may look innocent in their small sailor clothes and formal aprons, but don't be fooled. They are miniature bundles of mayhem with the stamina of a runner and negotiating skills that rival Victorian solicitors. The day begins early, usually with loud screams from the children's room suggesting someone has consumed the decorative fruit or, more likely, tested whether their doll floats in the chamber pot. The nursery is your battleground, and your supplies are limited. Serious glares, unfulfilled threats, and a very large tin of hard sweets. The teacher is technically in charge, but if you are the closest adult, or worse, the only adult present, you become the final authority on all disputes, small injuries, and moral crises. You act as judge, jury, and on truly awful days, as an unskilled doctor with a bit of lavender oil and a basic knowledge of bloodletting. Morning activities require careful planning. Unscheduled time is an invitation to disaster. So you assign tasks with military exactness, building blocks for the oldest, hoops and sticks for the middle ones, and for the youngest, supervised cat observation. Everyone has a job. No one, especially the cat, wants to do it. Breakfast is a test of patience and compromise. You attempt to coax hot cereal into small mouths while fending off complaints about the feel, the warmth, and the confusing issue of why jam is not available. At least 2 cups are spilled, someone's toast ends up under the furniture, and a small uprising starts when you announce no honey until after schoolwork. If you manage to leave breakfast without hot cereal in your hair or jam on your clothing, you have won the first round. Lessons begin, and suddenly every child is an expert at distraction. Mathematics brings tears, spelling causes rebellion, and anything in French causes a terror normally reserved for wild beasts. You have never seen anyone develop such a strong dislike for careful writing so quickly. Half the time you are unsure if you are teaching the alphabet or managing a slow-motion conflict over who gets the better writing slate. Outdoor time is next. Victorian custom insists children need fresh air and physical activity, preferably where neighbours can observe your parenting abilities. You bundle the children into coats, hats, gloves, and on difficult days, scarves so large they look like walking snowmen. The walk to the park is an adventure. Puddles are magnetic, dogs are irresistible, and everyone insists on collecting the kind of branch that would make a Victorian mother faint. If it rains, which this being England it does, the children are restricted to the play area where their imagination expresses itself through complex schemes, secret societies, and occasionally highly forbidden indoor cricket. You spend the afternoons resolving disagreements, enforcing rules, and occasionally buying silence with extra sweet treats. By late afternoon, energy levels are high and patience is low. You read stories, play shadow games, and hope that tales of good behaviour somehow soak in through magic. Children are finally handed over to the teacher for the formal evening cleaning, a process that results in clean faces, wet carpets, and, on one unforgettable day, a lost frog. Supervision is less about maintaining control and more about surviving until they go to sleep without losing your voice, your sanity, or your last piece of candy. Victorian children, with their lace collars and mischievous smiles, are both your greatest joy and your greatest difficulty. You emerge from the nursery drained but successful, ready for adult conversation, and, if you are lucky, a few moments of actual quiet. Until tomorrow, when the battle resumes and the small people with their demands, their opinions, and their incredible accuracy with tableware rise once more. You are not married. How fortunate for you. Every social gathering is a trap filled with available men, awkward dances, and mysterious marks on your hand coverings. You must appear delightful, interested, and absolutely not desperate, even when your future depends entirely on it. The Victorian method for finding a husband is essentially a dangerous game of chess played in voluminous skirts, with every mother watching from the side. From the moment you are declared ready to marry, every excursion, every afternoon tea, or every garden walk becomes a calculated opportunity for romantic progress, or just as likely, social embarrassment. Let us start with the initial meetings. You encounter potential partners in situations designed to maximize discomfort: a relative's outdoor party, the annual church event, or a dance where the lighting is dim enough to conceal minor imperfections but bright enough to make clumsy footwork obvious. Every appropriate gentleman is introduced with a quick summary of his prospects, owns a modest estate in the country from a good family, or sometimes simply remarkably skilled at card games. None of these facts guarantee an interesting discussion or a future free from marital unhappiness. The dance floor is where true personalities are revealed. You must navigate a confusing series of structured dances while avoiding direct gaze with anyone's mother. One wrong step could lead to a social blunder, or, worse, a marriage proposal from Mr. Thompson, who vaguely smells of garden produce and has not blinked since last autumn. Your kid gloves pick up odd marks, ink spots, berry juice, maybe even a trace of anxiety, as you strive to project an air of calm and not appear ruffled by your hasty evasion of your mother's second cousin. The drawing room discussion follows, a time when possible partners attempt to sound profound, and you must offer soft laughter at predetermined points, all while quietly judging whether proper teeth and steady earnings are truly the foundation for a life together. The requirements of suitable conduct are exhausting. Flirtation must be noticeable enough to signal your regard, yet measured enough to sidestep any suggestion of impropriety. A nervous twitter or an observation that is too direct immediately becomes the afternoon's drawing room gossip. If you are not cautious, you could find yourself seated next to a gentleman intent on detailing his beetle collection for a full hour. Congratulations! Your experience of courtship is quite literally a balancing act. This also includes notes exchanged discreetly beneath the unblinking watch of a chaperone. Each correspondence utilizes a careful code. Since conveying too much or too little can lead to speculation, misunderstanding, or intensely awkward talks with your mother, you treasure a delicate pressed blossom hidden within the pages. Or you must figure out if "respectfully yours" indicates genuine affection, or simply neat penmanship. Your relatives naturally monitor your every action. Your mother seems to possess a miraculous knack for identifying unsuitable suitors, while your father's primary condition is simply that your intended avoids financially destroying the family or inadvertently setting fire to the stables. Aunt Martha, meanwhile, maintains a precise count of every single available bachelor and is quite prepared to introduce you to all of them in a solitary afternoon. The results feel impossibly serious. One unfortunate decision leaves you unmarried, doomed to an existence of embroidery and helping care for other people's offspring. Every passing moment demands a careful equilibrium. Exhibit interest but not haste. Be intelligent but not excessively so. Display your needlework, but take care not to appear overly diligent, lest you seem to be searching for a job instead of a husband. You dream of a spouse who values more than your dowry or your lineage, but you would accept one who can discuss something besides livestock. Occasionally, a truly promising candidate appears, kind, moderately handsome, and with only a slight tendency to perspire through his shirt collar. Perhaps he even bothers to ask about your own interests or shares a liking for a new piece of fiction. But hesitate, and you will forfeit your chance. The Victorian marriage scene is less a massive ocean and more a small pool, and the competition remains fierce. Ultimately, successfully completing the suitor challenge focuses less on securing true love and more on avoiding public shame with your reputation intact. If you emerge with only a few embarrassing proposals, some confusing verse, and all your gloves accounted for, consider yourself a victor of the long-established Victorian courtship custom. The true achievement of Victorian social existence is avoiding any social mistake that causes a public fuss. This requires expertly navigating the many regulations concerning headwear, hand coverings, written letters, walks without supervision, and being seen with the wrong family member at the improper moment. Welcome to the subtle skill of Victorian self-preservation, where a single slip can transform you from a proper young woman into the afternoon's moral lesson quicker than you can say turtle soup. Scandal is hidden behind every lace curtain. To steer clear of it, you must maintain a state of vigilance that would tire a secret agent. First, the attire necessities. Hats must be worn outside, but may the powers above help you if you forget to remove yours upon entering a home. Gloves are obligatory for all excursions. Yes, even a quick walk in the yard. If you are noticed bare-handed, prepare for a week of speculation concerning your defiant spirit. Buttons must be correctly secured, shoelaces fastened, and most critically, nothing under any circumstance should hint at the existence of an ankle. Then there are the rules for letters. Written communication with men necessitates strict oversight. If you are sent a note, it must pass through your mother, the household staff, and probably the entire village before you can safely read it. Even the shade of the ink is scrutinized. Black is suitable, blue is considered slightly forward, and anything scented will provoke an uproar in the parlour. Regarding the seal, do not even think about using an affectionate design unless your intent is to have your romantic hopes analysed over tea for the following 10 years. Chaperones themselves constitute an entire profession devoted to preventing scandal. Want to take a stroll? Bring a chaperone. Want to visit acquaintances? Chaperone. Want to look at a gentleman in a public setting? Better hope your great-aunt is nearby, prepared to intervene between you and disaster. The unsupervised walk is the original forbidden enticement. One instance of participation and your good name is ruined. Never mind that your only companion was a perfectly behaved sheepdog. Dining presents its own sequence of risks. A single error at the dining table can destroy your social standing. Soup must be taken quietly, never audibly slurped. Bread is broken by hand, not cut with a utensil. Napkins belong in your lap. Never, under any condition, should they be tucked into your collar like a radical from Europe. And for the sake of propriety, do not let your spoon make a sound, or someone will suggest you are prone to nervous attacks. But the ultimate danger is being observed. Observed with the incorrect individual at the incorrect hour in the incorrect location. A walk with a second cousin after the sun sets is enough to send the rumour mill into a frenzy. Two single people conversing in a greenhouse. Scandal. Being caught laughing too loudly with the pastor's nephew. A serious scandal, and quite possibly a surprise engagement. If you are truly unfortunate, the scandal may not even be your fault. A sneeze during the church service, a trip over your skirt on the main street, or a regrettable incident involving a runaway hat can all earn you a temporary banishment from social life. Damage control is a crucial ability. Apologies must be prompt, humble, and preferably delivered by your mother. You will need to perfect the "it was all a simple misunderstanding" expression and develop a wide range of ambiguous explanations. Sometimes you simply must wait patiently. Scandal has the longevity of fresh milk, and eventually someone else will trip over the garden hose or drop their coin purse in the duck pond. The most painful element? Scandal rarely concerns what you actually did. It is about what people imagine you might have done. Guilt by mere association, suspicion based on nearness. The best you can hope for is to successfully complete the social season with your dignity, your dance card, and your standing unharmed. So you move carefully through the day, gloved, chaperoned, and attentive around soup, knowing that at any given moment, history might remember you as the young woman who established the standard for social disgrace with nothing more than an ill-timed sneeze and a slightly provocative hat ribbon. Victorian life. Come for the tea. Stay for the daily test of perseverance. Evening introduces the next major occurrence. Dinner. It is a 3-hour series of servings, each one more puzzling than the last. You are expected to keep pace with both the collection of cutlery and the flow of discussion, all while never admitting your strong dislike for gelatin. A Victorian dinner is not simply a meal, it is a trial, a magnificent shimmering production that challenges the dramatic abilities of every single member of the family. By the time you take your seat, you have already endured a change of clothes, a pre-dinner glass of fortified wine, and at least one serious instruction on the proper way to fold a napkin. Now situated at one side of a table long enough for a small plane to land upon, you are both a guest and a spectacle. The initial difficulty is the arrangement of the place setting. There are more forks than you have fingers, an imposing array of spoons, and at least 3 knives, each assigned for different, equally mysterious food items. You have studied the rule books, so you remember to start with the outside implements and work your way in. But there is always one unexpected tool, typically the small fish fork, waiting to expose you as a culinary pretender. Water glasses reflect light accusingly. Bread plates seem to mock you from your left side, or possibly your right, depending on who last organised the seating. And then the procession begins. Course after course arrives, each one more complex and strange than the last. Soup, served at the temperature of molten rock, is delicately sipped with absolute self-control. Fish follows, usually accompanied by a sauce that is either wonderful or deeply questionable, and you never determine which until it is too late. There is a roasted meat, a mysterious pastry, a selection of vegetables boiled until tasteless, and if your luck is truly bad, a trembling, oddly jiggling mound of gelatin that everyone pretends to appreciate completely. Conversation proves just as complicated as the menu. The hostess directs the discussion with expert skill, guiding the talk toward innocuous topics. Weather conditions, global news, or the moderate success of the flowering bushes in the West Garden. Men discuss political matters in hushed, polite voices, while women exchange carefully selected compliments. What an unusual choice of dress you've selected this season. You are required to give a polite laugh, agree, and offer precisely the correct comment. Too much risks seeming confrontational, too little makes you appear dull. Light conversation becomes a careful operation. Each anecdote must be entertaining without being offensive. Mention a relative's engagement, but be absolutely sure the match is respectable. Refer to last weekend's ball, but avoid mentioning whose dress was accidentally torn. When an uncomfortable silence occurs, quickly deploy the reliable fallback question. Isn't this broth simply exquisite? A question no one will answer truthfully. Then there is the issue of time. Dinner proceeds at the pace of social anxiety, too slowly for your hungry stomach, too quickly for discreet garden escapes. Just when you believe it is finally over, the staff appears with yet another dish. wild poultry, cold roasted meat, a dessert steamed beyond recognition, and then, at last, the cheese selection. You approach the cheese like an exhausted runner reaching the finish line, only to realise there are still sweets, various beverages, and one final course remaining. Throughout the entire event, you are performing, maintaining straight posture, keeping your fingers spotless, and projecting a tranquil composure. Dislike something? Smile and manage at least one polite nibble. Then skillfully move the food around on your plate to create the illusion that you have eaten. Never flat out decline a dish. Such poor behaviour could be a source of family stories for years to come. Eventually, the grand meal concludes, drinks are served, the chatter softens, and guests slowly move toward the sitting room, relieved to have survived another test of dining endurance. Your stomach is full, your mind is numb, and you are already anticipating tomorrow's leftovers. Dinner. More than simple nourishment, it is advanced training in survival methods and feigning appreciation for jellied meats. Goal accomplished. You are now certified for a lifetime of small talk and perhaps a furtive late-night bite. You cannot simply go to sleep. Next comes a series of parlour diversions, mandatory dramatic readings, and acting games so artificial you would honestly prefer scrubbing out the lavatory. You will politely chuckle at the same predictable jokes every single night, because the alternative is to be labelled a troublemaker. Victorian evenings stretch endlessly with compulsory amusement, all for the betterment of society. The dinner bell barely stops ringing before you are gently guided to the sitting room, where the furnishings have been subtly rearranged and everyone's polite face is strained to its limit. There is no escaping to your chamber with a book, not until you have endured 2 hours of wholesome, mildly competitive and frequently confusing entertainment. The host, with unsettling cheerfulness, introduces the activities as if revealing cosmic secrets. Acting games, understandably, remain a constant favourite among new attendees. Victorian charades involves less wild motion and more presenting short scenes from classic books, poems, or plays. If you have never tried miming the Lady of Shalott, while Aunt Bertha loudly guesses vegetables, it must be vegetables, and then congratulations, your suffering is yet to happen. Enter the parlour challenges, each one carefully designed to encourage good humour while creating potential chances for embarrassment. The Parson's Cat is a traditional game. Players describe the imaginary feline using a new adjective, moving alphabetically. The Parson's Cat is an agreeable cat, a bothersome cat, a cranky cat, until someone loses track or uses a ridiculous word like bilious, causing polite laughter and minor humiliation. Should charades and word puzzles fail to generate sufficient excitement, dramatic recitations are next. This is the moment when the family's aspiring performer, usually a relative with a strong devotion to metre and rhythm, fully unleashes their obsession with Shakespeare. You sit through countless lines of ancient sea poetry delivered with such force, you half expect the carpet to catch fire. There is always a pause when Uncle Harold suggests something lighter, only to be met with fervent excerpts from Macbeth. The display receives loud applause from several confused family members who are hoping for comedy. Music may follow, the piano is opened, sheet music rustles, and you silently pray you will not be requested to participate again. The youngest relative performs a piece from yesterday's lesson. The eldest cousin sings a long ballad that lasts longer than the dinner itself, while everyone hums along pretending to be in tune. In the ideal scenario, the household dog stays quiet, though he usually joins in with more genuine enthusiasm than anyone else present. Occasionally, someone suggests blindfolded running or flaming raising games that offer a real possibility of injury and genuine excitement. More often, evenings conclude with 20 questions, which inevitably descends into arguments over whether an ostrich can be classified as furniture, or forfeits, which are basically excuses to compel people to sing, dance, or publicly recite a silly verse. Through all of this, you maintain a polite smile and chuckle appropriately, successfully avoiding accusations of being unsociable. You applaud all performances, pretend surprise at unexpected plot developments, and eagerly offer guesses while silently counting the minutes until you are free. No one dares to suggest the simple act of sitting quietly, risking being labelled a malcontent or worse, being forced to return to word games with Aunt Bertha. Finally, the clock strikes a moment of relief, the games stop, the room is put back in order, and you are permitted to retire, your facial muscles aching from forced amusement and your spirit slightly worn out. But you have fulfilled your social duties, endured the mandatory entertainment, kept the peace, and maintained the delicate Victorian illusion that charades, parlour games, and dramatic readings represent the height of human enjoyment. Very well done. You have survived another evening of compulsory celebration. Rest well. Tomorrow might require the Lady of Shalott again, so be prepared. At last. You seize these valuable private moments for writing in your journal, offering a silent prayer, and privately despairing that your entire day has been under the intense scrutiny of your neighbours. The house finally grows quiet. No more forced parlour entertainment, no more obligatory applause, and for 30 blessed minutes no one is hovering to criticise your posture or inquire about your correspondence. You settle by the flickering candlelight at your small writing desk, a worn but beloved notebook open, and an inkwell that always somehow manages to smudge your nose. Writing remains your sacred ritual, a tiny rebellion against a day spent performing for the whole world. This is your only authentic space left, although your frankest entries truly resemble small catalogues of complaint and inventories of near catastrophe. Tuesday. You entirely escaped Aunt Bertha's matchmaking by simply feigning unconsciousness. It was almost worth the accompanying headache. The soup on the menu once again featured aspic. You spill details nobody else could possibly grasp. The torture of stays tightened 2 inches too much. The small victory of remembering the proper utensils at supper, and the pure thrill of pilfering preserves undetected from the pantry. Your journal's official voice always stays grateful and measured, but the undertone screams pure, concentrated exhaustion. You catalogue your blessings, a reasonable state of health, despite your blisters and persistent existential gloom, a decent family even with their strange post-dinner poetry habits, and shelter overhead preferably completely rodent-free. For the sake of future readers, you include polite lines about the satisfaction of needlework and properly maintained houseplants. But underneath, your private journal serves as an important emotional release valve. Here you finally admit that endless social visits, perfectly pressed linens, and marathon rounds of charades do not actually constitute your definition of happiness. You secretly record your secret worries. Will Mother ever fully approve of my current hair accessories? Did anyone actually notice my near-napkin fumble during dinner? What if I perish unexpectedly and they decide to publish this publicly? Dear Journal, today was lovely. There's the hidden version. Dear Journal, today was merely bearable. Writing also generously provides a private dreaming space. You outline your secret ambitions, plans for continental travel, novel publication under bold pseudonyms, or on rebellious nights, simply purchasing personal millinery without committee consultation. The writing process, slow and entirely intentional, reminds you that you still possess an independent mind. Even after spending entire afternoons pretending interest in Aunt Augusta's embroidery samples, sometimes you attempt philosophy. Does life truly offer more than household bookkeeping and birthday remembrance? Can someone be perfectly mannered and completely satisfied simultaneously? Or must you always choose? You exhale, recognizing that Victorian society is fundamentally built on compromise artistry between public expectations and personal truth, reputation, and true identity. As the single flame dims, your eyelids droop, and your careful penmanship deteriorates from a careful script into exhausted scribbling. You conclude your entries with vague hopes for slightly less tiring, more meaningful tomorrows, or minimally reduced encounters with aspic. You shut the journal with a snap, secure it in your locked compartment, and savor this moment of privacy, a commodity rarer than gems in a world where even your thoughts need respectability. Using your remaining energy, you slip into bed and let your mind completely drift, comforted by knowing that for a few nightly minutes you exist solely for yourself. Sleep thankfully arrives as a gentle mercy, and tomorrow will bring the same repetition with slightly more cleverness, more determination, and slightly more existential anxiety. Congratulations! You have survived another Victorian day, documented secret truths, and quietly preserved your unique spirit. Before fully retiring, you must remove all the hairpins, say your evening prayers, and possibly negotiate with the Almighty for dreams that are completely corset-free. Bedtime itself becomes a whole ordeal, and rest more closely resembles social experimentation than certainty. Evening in Victorian households arrives softly but never without its complications. Candlelight dances gently against the wallpaper. The house groans while settling, and you realise your day is far from finished. There is the rigid, unwinding routine, a ritual gauntlet designed to ensure both physical and moral cleanliness, plus reasonable odds of surviving until morning without becoming tomorrow's biggest scandal. Hair care comes first. Victorian hairstyling necessitates engineering, needing roughly 30 minutes nightly for dismantling. You start slowly removing a tiny weapon collection of pins, anywhere from 15 to 50, depending on the day's supposedly simple arrangement. Hopefully none of them will drop into the wash basin. You brush your hair with long, purposeful strokes, 100 if you're actively seeking sainthood or maternal approval, trying hard not to consider how many family secrets might be tangled in the strands. After hair comes the face cleansing, which is always a shocking experience. The water always stays cold, the soap feels suspiciously chunky, and the towel could easily substitute as sandpaper. You wash away the daily powder and your concerns, watching your reflection in the murky mirror, while attempting to scrub off lingering breakfast conversation anxieties. Once your face returns somewhat to its original condition, you examine your skin for any fresh blemishes, as if each one represents a personal failure or spinsterhood omens. Now, for the spiritual segment, your evening prayers. You kneel dutifully beside your bed, hands clasped tightly, reciting identical memorized passages you've mumbled since childhood. But tonight, maybe you sneak in some personal requests, something about increased patience with Aunt Bertha, miraculous jam stain remedies, and perhaps just once, dreams where you wear pants and do something genuinely scandalous like riding a bicycle or refusing second aspic helpings. Bedtime itself quickly becomes an event. The bed forms a blanket and pillow fortress, built specifically against the notorious English cold. You slide carefully between chilled linens, actively avoiding patches that were missed by the warming bottle. If you are especially lucky, your bedroom fire might still glow faintly. Otherwise, you just try to convince yourself that shivering builds character. But sleep frequently eludes the Victorian mind. Instead, you lie wide awake, cataloguing all the daily embarrassments and tomorrow's various worries. Did you bid Lady Prescott farewell or good evening at tea? Did you properly remember winding the clock, shutting the window, and hiding your journal from your nosy siblings? Your brain races through endless social calculations, each one more disastrous than the previous, until you finally surrender and listen to the wind rattling the window panes. In those final drowsy moments, you face the existential dread accompanying Victorian womanhood, the sensation that your life is constantly displayed, your value measured primarily in manners, and even in the darkness, someone might be judging your snoring. You seek peace knowing that for now, you've survived mostly intact and only slightly traumatized by jellied meat. Eventually, your thoughts slow down. Your body relaxes completely, and you drift away, hoping for nights free of corset dreams, public scandals, or accidentally addressing the minister as mother. Congratulations! You have successfully completed the nightly rituals. Tomorrow morning brings fresh starts, armed with your hairbrush, a prayer, and the faint hope for slightly less existential bedtimes. Sleep well in Victorian England. That's truthfully all anyone can reasonably expect. Catch a cold, and you are instantly bedridden, surrounded by concerned relatives and a rotating cast of questionable medical authorities. You'll receive treatments ranging from harsh mustard compresses to complete and total denial. The very first signs of illness, a sneeze, a cough, or a complaint of chilliness sends entire households into panic mode. News spreads much faster than actual germs. Within moments, your mother, the housekeeper, and a minimum of 3 aunts cluster around your bedside, clutching handkerchiefs and reciting family medical wisdom. You absolutely must rest, they constantly demand, while simultaneously requesting detailed recalls of your recent meals, yesterday's total fresh air intake, and whether your feet encountered any moisture. Victorian sick days equally balance maximum drama and total inconvenience. The sick room is prepared with the urgency of a royal birth. Curtains are immediately closed, the scent of camphor quickly fills the air, and someone delivers trays containing weak tea and plain toast. The fire burns at oddly punishing temperatures, as if perspiration universally heals all ailments. You're tucked under sufficient blankets to entirely suffocate your symptoms and your breathing hopes. A bell stays within easy reach, not for summoning comfort, but for calling more symptom interrogators. Now enter the home treatments, as relatives rotate through humour-drawing remedies. Someone quickly produces patent medicine bottles promising relief for cold, cough, rickets, and possibly original sin itself. It tastes exactly like liquid leather polish and burns all the way down. Failing that, there are the popular mustard plasters, applied with the gentleness of masonry. It burns, itches intensely, and leaves you questioning whether the cures actually punish the complaints. Medical professionals, if eventually summoned, arrive bearing their own personal horrors. The family physician dangerously combines wisdom and gambling, ready to prescribe everything from bloodsuckers for certainty to system-cleansing purgatives. The less fortunate might encounter neighbours with strong homeopathic tendencies recommending everything from lavender compresses to fresh onions worn around your neck. You comply, mainly because resistance demands more energy than you currently have available, and you're already half convinced you're dying from sheer tedium. Meanwhile, family members debate loudly over your bedside, all in carefully modulated whispers. Is it merely a minor ailment or something much more hanging on? Should you actually be permitted to read, or will the thrill of a romance novel immediately throw you into delirium? Each cup of tea is given with the solemn gravity of medicine. Every cough is met with great worry, immediate guidance, or in Aunt Bertha's specific case, an endless story about how she almost died from a cold, but was ultimately rescued by brisk walks and a shocking amount of bacon grease. Rest is the official treatment, but genuine sleep remains completely elusive. The door squeaks open every 10 minutes, servants tending to the fire, brothers and sisters sneaking a quick peek, family members just ensuring you're still among the living. The only true quiet comes in the early morning hours when you can finally lie still, wrapped securely in your fortress of blankets, and dream of a world where a touch of the sniffles is met with nothing more than a peaceful nap and a pile of scandalous books. Getting better is equally dramatic in its own way. You're immediately praised for your courage. Such a model patient who barely complained at all. And you're gently guided back into your household duties, though strictly banned from strenuous activity for at least 2 weeks. Unless, of course, you're suddenly needed for a particularly tedious social visit. Well done. You've successfully endured the Victorian sick day, medicated, overheated, questioned, and finally released back into society. And if that cough still lingers, you'd better definitely keep it quiet. Trust me, you absolutely don't want to repeat this ordeal until at least Christmas. Underneath all those layers of manners and ruffles, every single Victorian woman keeps her secret delights and forbidden pleasures close. Whether it's sneaking candy, reading highly prohibited books, or simply fantasizing about a world where trousers are finally acceptable attire. On the surface, your entire existence is an endless march of proper behaviour, refined skills, and polite self-control. But behind every perfectly arranged lace curtain lies a whole hidden world. The reality is, even the most respectable young lady has her guilty indulgences, and more often than not, she's become quite skilled at completely concealing them. Let's quickly begin with the most obvious: sweets. Officially, you only consume sugar during strictly approved mealtimes and always with a required moderation expected of someone whose figure is constantly under public examination. But oh, the intense excitement of slipping an extra chocolate from the sitting room dish when no one is looking, or grabbing a quick handful of crystallized violets from the jar Aunt Prudence believes is purely decorative. Some nights, you and your most reliable friend might even sneak into the pantry for a spoonful of illicit preserves. Shocking, delightfully messy, and absolutely worth the risk of detection. If anyone happens to notice the missing sugar, you simply point your fingers at the children. The children, the cat, or perhaps that mysterious draft. Books readily offer another path to the forbidden. You prominently display a proper volume on your bedside table, perhaps the young lady's manual for moral improvement or wise sayings for every situation, but safely hidden underneath, fully concealed from any curious eyes, lies a well-worn copy of the latest thriller. Sensational tales of murder, mystery, and heroines who finally dare to have real emotions. Maybe you trade books with your bolder friends, each of you mastering the careful art of disguising your reading material in plain brown wrappers when anyone draws near. If you are particularly daring, you might even own a smuggled French novel, snuck from a relative's luggage and read by flickering candlelight, your pulse racing with every page turn. And then there's the enduring clothing fantasy, pants. The simple, wonderful freedom of not having to wrestle with 7 pounds of petticoats every time you want to sit down or exit a room quickly. It's not just purely about ease, it's about vividly imagining walking quickly through the large garden, scaling a tree, or heaven help us all, actually running just for pure joy. In your most private moments, you clearly picture an alternate reality where ladies can freely wear trousers, possess useful pockets, and aren't constantly judged for what's inside them. But not all secrets are so harmless. Some women maintain a secret supply of calming drops or a private bottle of wine for those especially challenging afternoons enduring family chaos or Aunt Bertha's terrible piano performances. You might keep a hidden collection of passionate letters, old love notes, unsigned poems, or a single message from a potential suitor that you treasure more for the thrill of the excitement than the actual romance. For the few artistically gifted, there are forbidden drawings, caricatures of your family, fanciful designs for hats you'd never dare wear in public, or even a surprisingly realistic sketch of the groundskeeper. Strictly for artistic practice only, naturally. Then there are all the aspirations that never leave your diary, secret goals, dreams of grand adventure, writing, performing on a stage, or becoming an explorer in a world that only pretends to permit such things for women. Sometimes you sketch your future self on horseback, behind a podium, or simply alone in a quiet room where nobody questions your activities. The simple fact that these must remain secret reveals much more about society than about you. Still, the best kept secret is often simply the pure joy of solitude. 10 stolen minutes in the peaceful garden, a few precious pages read in the storage room, a private laugh at an absurd hat, or a whispered joke with a trusted friend who deeply understands just how ridiculous all this propriety truly is. And so, while the outside world continually observes a perfect model of decorum, inside you fiercely maintain a rich, private existence. A world of small rebellions, secret pleasures, and powerful dreams that make the corsets, the idle chatter, and even the awful gelatin entirely worth tolerating. Because what nobody truly acknowledges is that being a Victorian woman is a masterclass in endurance, and the real entertainment always happens after everyone else has gone to bed. Every proper Victorian woman requires her fresh air, which is precisely why you are now undertaking a morning stroll that is equal parts necessary exercise and competitive social performance. With your guardian 2 paces dutifully behind, and your parasol positioned just right, you glide down the avenue at the exact pace that proudly declares, "I'm above gossip, but certainly not above critiquing your bonnet." Walking is significantly less about fitness, and much more about maximum visibility, ideally by all the proper people, and definitely never by anyone hawking fish loudly. The preparations for an appropriate walk rival those of a small military campaign. First, you must choose a dress that is sufficiently stylish, but not so incredibly striking that it immediately invites whispers from the neighbours. Gloves are strictly mandatory, preferably spotless, since nothing screams fallen woman like grass stains on your fingertips. Your shoes must be suitable for cobblestones, yet delicate enough to strongly suggest you've never once chased a carriage in your entire existence. And absolutely do not overlook your hat, positioned at precisely the right angle to frame your face in a way that implies both modest virtue and just the slightest hint of intrigue. Your chaperone, whether it's your mother, aunt, or mildly disapproving family friend, examines your entire ensemble with eyes sharp enough to effortlessly slice silk. She fixes your neckline, clicks her tongue at a single wayward curl, and equips herself with a purse large enough to hold smelling salts, a small prayer book, and enough mints to sustain both of you until noon. You leave the house as a unit, although certainly not as equals. The paving stones instantly become a vibrant stage. This is more than just a simple walk. You are participating in the complicated ritual of society life. Every married woman in her window, every roaming child, every merchant scrubbing their shop front serves as both viewer and appraiser. You exchange polite acknowledgements with people you know, share precisely measured smiles with prospective rivals, and grant a subtle recognition to any companion currently not suspected of impropriety. This journey adheres to certain rules. Never move quickly enough to suggest haste. What exactly is your cause for flight? Yet never proceed slowly either, lest someone think you are seeking attention or perish the thought, hoping to catch a glimpse of the new assistant at the millinery shop. Traversing the sidewalk becomes a competition in itself, a delicate dance of yielding space, pressing forward and neatly avoiding any indication of genuine effort. The only danger greater than tripping on loose pavement is accidentally meeting the local fish vendor's eye, who might loudly deliver greetings that include facts about your family's most recent purchase of cod. A catastrophe in public. The parasol, meanwhile, provides more than just shade from the sunlight. It is your most essential accessory. You maneuver it with cultivated grace, using it to signal disapproval with a quick snap shut, curiosity with a gentle lean toward a particularly stylish pedestrian, or sheer terror when a loose dog approaches too closely, or, worse yet, an unescorted gentleman. The skill of the parasol lies in communicating a great deal without uttering a word. If luck is on your side, your path will lead you through the public grounds, where you can admire the flower beds, engage in short, suitably unremarkable conversation with other walkers, and be observed by exactly the correct quantity of eligible male company, neither too many nor too few. You pause to look at the water birds, which are notably less judgmental than your neighbours, and exchange harmless gossip with your friend who somehow manages to phrase questions about someone's rose cultivation like stern warnings about moral decay. There are always challenges. An unexpected shower threatens to ruin your elaborate coiffure and dismantle your poise. A reckless small boy almost runs into your garment, prompting sharp intakes of breath and declarations regarding proper decorum. You expertly manage to avoid stepping in anything that could soil your footwear or your reputation. The excursion concludes with a victorious arrival back at your residence. Cheeks delicately flushed, social standing undamaged, and just enough air circulating beneath your head covering to indicate that, indeed, you have enjoyed the natural air. Your companion confirms the success of the outing, No fainting episodes, no social disgrace, and not a single fish vendor spotted. A task completed well. You have walked the public road for literally no concrete purpose, flawlessly executed the intricate ceremony of respectable Victorian conduct, and returned triumphant. Until the next day, when the spectacle begins once more and your sunshade waits, ready for its next appearance. If you are fortunate enough to possess a green area, you should be commended. You have secured the era's most socially acceptable justification to manipulate the soil and pretend you are too occupied to respond to unwelcome questions about future marriage. Victorian garden maintenance is less concerned with producing food and more focused on vying for the distinction of owning the most unnecessary rosebush. You kneel on the ground, clipping flower heads and nurturing a profound, unspoken rivalry with Mrs. Pennywhistle next door, whose flowers are honestly offensive. In the collective view of society, attending to a garden is the one truly moral leisure activity, unlike musical endeavours which carry the risk of becoming too expressive. Or reading material, which might plant dangerous notions. Caring for your flower beds is an indisputable mark of virtuous character. It also presents a rare opening for honest physical exertion, although you must, naturally, never admit to finding satisfaction in the work. The entire activity follows a meticulous procedure. Rest on a protective cushion to keep your dress clean, wear protective coverings to shield your delicate hands, and handle your small gardening trowel with the refined air of a person who has definitely read all the relevant articles in the women's periodicals. The garden space becomes a canvas for your ambitions, minor frustrations, and social objectives. Every planted edge, every climbing vine, every surprisingly exotic flower signifies both a personal achievement and a not-so-subtle communication to visitors. Yes, I possess good taste. No, I absolutely did not murder my spouse and bury him underneath the sweet-smelling vine, despite Mrs. Pennywhistle's implications. The choice of plants inspires continuous argument. Campanula flowers for humility, violet blooms for modesty, a solitary dramatic flower for a hint of mystery if the situation demands it. Crucially, the real motivation for garden care is tactical. There is no better reason for avoiding an uncomfortable afternoon gathering or escaping a persistent suitor than asserting the climbing flowers simply cannot wait another moment. You can reliably vanish behind the thick foliage when Aunt Bertha is seen approaching, gardening shears in your grip and your most serious expression carefully prepared. Few people dare to interrupt a woman clearly committed to defeating plant sickness and overbearing relatives in the course of a single afternoon. But let us be clear, gardening is also warfare. Your most formidable opponent always resides immediately next door. Mrs. Pennywhistle has dedicated years to ensuring her boundary is perfect, spreading gossip regarding your plants, and making dubious assertions about her prized soil mixture. You pretend not to notice when she leans over the dividing line to critique your weeding habits, or offers unsolicited recommendations about the ideal depth for small bulbs. Sometimes she appears to be pruning her own shrubs, but you know she is actually counting your total number of flowers. And truthfully, you have participated in exactly the same behaviour, possibly with a marginally more dignified manner. Despite the intense competition, the garden offers a rare haven of peace in your busy schedule. The smell of fresh soil, the quiet hum of flying insects, and the infrequent pleasure of discovering a flawless, unseen earthworm provide a simple satisfaction that almost makes up for the endless hours of sewing and forced small talk. In this location, among the common flowers and the brightly coloured blossoms, you can indulge in private thoughts, listen to the world quietly proceed around you, and get earth beneath your fingernails without any observers except the small avian life. Your mother approves, as long as you prevent sun damage and refrain from an unladylike degree of strain. Your family members pay you no attention, convinced you are engaging in a form of spiritual penance. The garden transforms into your safe location, your battleground, your private therapeutic space, a site where you can cultivate something beautiful, or at least keep your hands occupied while formulating next week's perfect response to Mrs. Pennywhistle. As the daylight fades, you take a moment to assess your labour. The cultivated beds look successful, the ground cover is appropriately uniform, and your rival's favourite blooms, while still annoying, appear just slightly less self-congratulatory. You wipe clean your protective hand coverings, adjust your headwear, and go inside, feeling a peculiar sensation of success. Gardening, proof that occasionally the best way to survive respectable womanhood is to cultivate deeply, plant with confidence, and let the neighbours suffer in their own jealousy. Today's schedule lists garment fitting, which is a polite term for voluntary immobility, while complete strangers jab you with small sharp implements. You stand upon a low base, arms extended, while a seamstress whispers softly about your carriage and a distant relative supplies unhelpful comments regarding the required sleeve length. The appointment lasts long enough for you to contemplate every sugary treat you have ever consumed and question whether you truly appreciate the colour a light purple pink. Respectable garment fittings are an extended examination of endurance, a blend of silent discomfort, uneasy self-assessment, and the constant threat of being accidentally pierced by someone who possesses more critical opinions than patience. The morning begins with an atmosphere of serious importance. You are shown into the dedicated fitting space, a place where time loses meaning, and the sole certainty is that someone will measure your midsection and then imply it could benefit from a bit more compression. The first step is the required ceremony of undressing. Garments are removed layer by layer like the coverings of a highly anxious vegetable. Outer coat, lower skirt, multiple undergarments, the fitted undergarment, and the restricting corset itself, which, just for the record, never seems to fit exactly the same way more than once. Each item is neatly folded and set down while you try to ignore the chill in the air and hope no one remarks upon your interior clothing. The seamstress approaches with a small container of pins secured to her wrist and an expression that suggests we are about to quantify precisely how much you truly enjoy baked goods. Then the material is draped and secured with the methodical precision of a military drill. The upper portion is sculpted, the lower sections are arranged, and lengths of fabric coil around you like a highly decorative form of physical restraint. Your responsibility is to remain perfectly motionless, breathe in a shallow manner, and resist the strong impulse to relieve the itch on your nose, an annoyance that only escalates as the minutes slowly tick by. In the meantime, the panel of commentators forms. Your mother remains nearby, offering gentle encouragement and less gentle reminders that we intend this dress to be suitable and long-lasting, not designed to attract undue attention. A relative or two casually stroll in, conveniently offering thoughts such as "have you considered wider cuffs?" or "that specific colour is quite bold." The seamstress sighs, pulls and pins. Her quiet observations ranging from the upper section is generous, meaning you need more internal support, to "we will just increase the circumference by a ½ inch. Someone has clearly been indulging in sweet items." Every part of your body is measured, examined and critiqued. You have never been more aware of your own physical presence. Is your alignment correct? Are your upper limbs the same length? Did you genuinely gain weight? Or is light purple pink simply an unforgiving colour? You maintain a fixed gaze forward, watching small airborne particles drift in the light and attempting to mentally write your next diary entry. Survived another session, total absence of sensation in lower left leg, may never appreciate heavy velvet in the same way again. The process moves at a painfully slow rate. Every seam must be perfect, every lower edge level, every single detail debated, adjusted, and then debated once more. If you dare to let out a breath or shift your weight, the seamstress sighs louder and announces if you are unable to stand completely still now, how do you anticipate surviving a 3-hour formal dinner? You suppress the desire to respond with optimism and supportive footwear. The grand finale arrives when you are finally given permission to see your reflection in the full-length mirror. There you stand, the clothing gradually taking shape, small sharp objects catching the light, a vision of respectable elegance. at least until someone suggests that the decorative trim needs adjustment or the rear padding could be more substantial. You nod as if you fully grasp the complexities of rear padding and try to ignore the serious question burning in your thoughts. Is all this trouble truly warranted for one solitary outdoor engagement? When you are eventually released, you remove the test garments, thank the seamstress who is already scheduling your subsequent appointment, and make your exit with a sense of triumph mixed with slight mental exhaustion. You are one step closer to possessing a garment that will be the source of envy for the entire neighbourhood, or at least the only one in light purple pink. A job well done. You have endured the garment fitting, a comprehensive lesson in endurance, body positioning, and the strange human impulse to suffer for the sake of appearance. Your house does have domestic help, but each new day presents fresh opportunities to master the fine art of subtle dissatisfaction. The container for burning material is barely half full. The young male employee's hair is slightly too contemporary, and someone has moved your favourite chair 3 inches to the left, likely as part of a quiet domestic rebellion. You tap into your inner manager, issue vague directions, and prepare for the next engagement in the continuous internal conflict. Respectable homes function on a steady supply of strict adherence, formal procedure, and quiet emotional leverage. As the woman who runs the house, you are expected to keep everyone compliant, maintain flawless standards, and accomplish all of this with the type of gentle power that suggests both authority and deep reserves of patience, even when you possess neither of those qualities. The official instruction, never raise your voice. The unofficial instruction, never allow them to observe you losing control. The daily progression of small infractions begins with the morning inspection. You walk through the house with the measured steps of a royal on an unscheduled visit, observing with sharp accuracy every minute particle of dust, misplaced cushion, and slightly drooping plant. The female attendant responsible for cleaning your desk is reliably cheerful, which makes it twice as hard to mention that the silver ink container now carries a faint odour of root vegetable. You offer a smile, and with a tone so even it borders on menace, you say perhaps next time just a tiny fraction less vigour with the cleaning solvent, Mary. It is a delicate operation. You must never make an outright criticism, but instead utilise an arsenal of non-specific remarks and quiet criticisms. The evening meal was certainly distinctive tonight, chef. Perhaps tomorrow something a little more traditional would be appreciated. Or, to the young male attendant, what a particularly striking way to arrange your hair, John. Is that a style from a foreign country? The most potent statement in your entire vocabulary is I wonder if we might try doing it this way, which roughly translates to comply with this at once, or I will be mortified before the midday meal. And there are always small oddities. The container for burning material, for instance, is never quite full. Is this the work of the new scullery help, or has the head male attendant quietly declared a personal protest against proper warmth? You are never completely certain, but you offer subtle clues. How surprisingly cool the sitting area feels this morning. Perhaps we could be unusually generous with the coal. The chair, mysteriously moved, becomes the focus of a week-long investigation, as you meticulously mention to everyone within potential hearing range how perfectly the illumination in this precise location suits reading. Sometimes, of course, your careful efforts do not achieve the desired outcome. The staff, operating under their own separate system of authority, develop non-verbal signals for domestic resistance. The seasoning container is never in the same location more than once. The head female attendant insists the chair must be moved to facilitate improved air circulation. The person responsible for the grounds inexplicably fails to trim Mrs. Pennywhistle's side of the boundary. You issue directions, receive unenthusiastic confirmations, and await the next, inevitably, original act of insubordination. Your only line of defence is mastering the art of subtle escalation. Start with a gentle reminder, progress to a slightly more forceful suggestion. When all else is unsuccessful, you deploy the ultimate resource, a visit from your mother or the religious leader. Both are guaranteed to inspire sudden, miraculous improvement in established standards for at least 2 days. Yet throughout all of this, you're also expected to be compassionate, attentive, and never, under any circumstance, forget a birth date or a significant anniversary. You remember preferred warm drinks, inquire about ill family members, and distribute modest tokens during the winter holidays, even while quietly planning a complete replacement of the kitchen employees. The ultimate objective is calm and order, but the reality is continuous negotiation, a quiet skirmish, fought with polished trays and neatly folded cloth. At the conclusion of the day, you settle into your perfectly relocated chair, contemplating your small victories. The fire is burning, the evening meal is acceptable, and the young male attendant's hair is, well, still a bit too foreign for your taste. But you will deal with that tomorrow. Well done. You have survived another round of the domestic staff competition, demonstrating all the strategic brilliance of a high-ranking military officer and the patience of a truly virtuous person. In this environment, this is simply the baseline expectation. So here we come to the conclusion of a day in the life of a respectable woman. If you navigated the restrictive undergarments, the social visits, the gardening rivalries, and the daily obstacle course of societal demands, congratulations! You have successfully survived what amounts to history's longest professional assessment with significantly fewer quick meals and a substantial amount more decorative needlework. It is easy to find amusement in the formal behaviour, the endless small talk, and the silliness of specialised furniture for emotional distress. But the fact is, these women were expert at survival in a world where even the act of sitting down could be an examination of moral integrity. They managed intense scrutiny with complete grace, turned boring tasks into a form of artistic expression, and successfully appeared composed while single-handedly sustaining the entire correspondence industry. They functioned as chief executives in voluminous skirts, diplomats in elaborate head coverings, and masters at pretending they were not about to pass out from the pressure of the fourth layer of undergarments. So this evening, as you relax into your soft, supportive, likely synthetic material mattress, perhaps quietly offer thanks to the generations before you who endured strict schedules, impossible demands, and the kind of physical discomfort that would bring a modern orthopedic specialist to tears. Be grateful for elastic waistbands, modern indoor plumbing, and the ability to leave your residence without a proper head covering, or leave at all. Because history may be awkward, highly inconvenient, and just a bit ridiculous, but it is also solid proof that human beings are endlessly adaptable, quietly strong, and occasionally very entertaining. Allow that thought to settle in as you slowly drift off to sleep. You are not required to compose a thank you note to your neighbour for the privilege of borrowing flavouring, and no one is currently criticising your choice of nighttime attire. Rest peacefully, knowing you have earned it without a single specialised chair for distress anywhere in sight. Good night.